Chapter 11:23. In fact, the reason why little Baldy could run so fast was because he had to carry water every morning in the temple. The disciples felt that his combat strength was too strong, so they tied a circle of gravity iron around the child's legs. Now that little Baldy had gone down the mountain, his body was no longer bound, so of course, his speed was extraordinary. Master Li panted behind him and cried, "Bai Juan, you said not to go too far. Look at your child. He looks like the kind of person who can't go too far." Children are very active. Bai Juan sent Master Li away with these words. At the same time, he had a general understanding of his junior brother. Originally, when he saw that the child was young, the master would not give the things in the temple to the child. Now, it seemed that he had underestimated the master's method of calling people. In fact, Bai Juan did not underestimate the old monk. It was just that he could not prevent little Baldy from becoming a self-taught talent. When children played, it was always noisy. A passing chief saw this and nodded with a smile. Seeing this group of children reminds us of when we were young, right? That brat of mine doesn't do homework again. This was Master Li's father. The person beside him smiled and said, "Don't worry, there's Bai Juan to take care of him. They're both children. Why is the difference so big?" Master Li's father wanted to cry when he talked about this. Could it be a genetic mutation? On the other side, Master Li was still shouting, "Damn it, Wang Da Zhuang. Don't pull Master Li's pants. Left, crawl to the left. Li Hailu, get your ass back here." Just like that, little Baldy's first day in a military compound ended with Master Li being chased around the compound by his father. Little Baldy played very happily. He had to exercise every day. If he did not play like this, the energy in his body would not be used up. When Bai Juan brought the child home, it was almost 6 o'clock. It was time to eat again. This time, without little Baldy saying anything, Annie Wang made a table full of vegetarian dishes. There were tomato beans, cold lotus root, stir-fried wood ears, and baby cabbage. There was everything. The pot was stewed with big rice. Usually, Annie Wang used a small pot to stew for the young master. After seeing little Baldy's appetite, she decisively changed to a big pot. Little Baldy held the steaming white rice and ate it. From time to time, he would raise his little head and smile at Bai Juan. For little Baldy, the happiest thing in the world was being able to eat white rice. Only then did Bai Juan realize that the child's favorite was not big steam buns, but rice. After discovering this, Master Bai immediately called the canteen in the courtyard and asked them to move all the rice that had been transported from the northeast. The prerequisite for raising a child was to feed her well. Little Baldy was indeed very full. With a round belly, he carried a small stool and ran around. She wanted to wash the dishes herself, but Annie Wang wouldn't let the child touch them no matter what. Since little Baldy had nothing else to do, he started to move the stool again. Young Master Bai reached out and grabbed the child, taking her out for a walk. Little Baldy walked slowly this time. He was very obedient and let the little brother hold his hand. The white cat walked in front of him. When an old chief saw them, he asked, "Hey, who is little Bai holding hands with? Why are you dressed like this?" "My younger brother just came down from the mountain." Everyone that Bai Juan met said that the child was his. When they came out for a walk at this time, they would only meet those old men in the courtyard. Bai Juan's action was undoubtedly to reveal little Baldy's identity. Young Master Bai had thought of many things since he was young. Since she was his child, she would definitely be involved in both the military and the political in the future. He had to nurture the child's ruthlessness. At the very least, no one would dare to provoke little Jew. As for boys, they had to be raised with more integrity. This was what his grandfather often said when he raised him. Young Master Bai thought that this method should be suitable for little Jew. Little Baldy was soft and cute to begin with. When a few old chiefs saw her, they all wanted to hug her. Ba. Little Baldy bowed and shook her head. "A Jew is too heavy. The grandpas can't carry her." The adjutants beside her would not let the old chiefs carry her either. Like coaxing a child, they coaxed the old men. They could not hug her, but they had to pinch her. Who knew that the Bai family's boy was so protective? When he saw them make a move, he said, "Grandpas, it's getting late. A Jew still has to go back and wash her hands and sleep." I'll bring her out tomorrow morning to accompany the grandpas in military boxing. Go, go. What a little fox. The old chiefs liked to buy families, boy. Among them, there were also grandsons. However, when they thought of their grandsons, they felt a burning sensation. Children were more sensible when they were younger. When they grew up, they were getting further and further away from them. After little Baldy returned to the villa, she obediently let her little brother wash her hands. Then, she arched her small body and took out her small package. Inside were scriptures and some monk robes, as well as other miscellaneous items, all of which were related to Buddha. Little Baldy first opened the scriptures and seriously laid on the wooden table to copy the scriptures. This was what she had to do every day before she went to bed. If she did not do it, Buddha would blame her. After copying the scriptures, little Baldy began to write a diary. After the diary was written, it had to be mailed to a place regularly. Although her master did not say anything, little Baldy knew in her heart that it must be her mother and brother who were worried about her. So they asked her to write about her daily life. Therefore, from that day onwards, little Baldy wrote the diary very seriously. Today, little brother and I came to the city. The house in the city was so big, and there was also a gray plane. Little brother was very good to me. He gave me white rice to eat and even asked people to come and wrestle with me. Although those people's standards were not very good, I still lived very happily. The people at the foot of the mountain are more difficult to communicate with. Buddha Woolley said, that time is omnipotent. I will slowly let everyone. Little Baldy wrote until here and scratched her big head. Bai Juan, who had just taken a shower and was wiping her hair, was still watching from behind. When he saw the little guy stop, he asked with a light smile, "What's wrong?" "Little brother, how do you spell G? Esha?" A Jew forgot. Little Baldy's brows were furrowed into a ball in distress. The smile on Bai Juan's lips grew wider. He carried the little guy over and placed her on his lap. Then, his fair fingers reached over and held the Jew's hand. Two beautiful words clearly appeared in the diary, except little Baldy looked at the handwriting that was obviously different from hers. She felt that her handwriting was too much like a dog's. Why was that? My handwriting is not good. The little guy raised his head and asked, if my handwriting is not good, will I get a 0 in the exam? Bai Juan pinched her face and comforted her. No, bad handwriting is usually hereditary. Really? Yes. It had to be said that from a certain point of view, young Master Bai immediately gave the truth. Little Baldy finally finished writing today's diary. She closed a small notebook and said, I'm going to wash up. Chapter 1124. Take a bath. Bai Juan recalled the situation when little Baldy washed his hands previously. He thought for a moment and said, I'll help you wash. It's too slippery in the bathtub, so you won't be able to stand steadily. Little Baldy shook his head and said, No, Woolly Buddha said that I have to do my own things. Master told me to wash myself clean by myself. There's nothing wrong with that. Bai Juan saw that he could not persuade the child, so he could only choose a compromise. He told little Baldy not to lock the door and waited outside. If something happened, he could go in at any time. Little Baldy felt that his little brother was making a fuss. How could he fall? As for the wash basin incident, he was too curious and did not control himself. It would definitely not happen a second time. This time, nothing happened to little Baldy. He took off his clothes and stood under the rain, wiping his back in a dignified manner. If Bai Juan came in at this time, he would definitely find that the little junior brother in his heart was not a boy, but a little girl. After little Baldy finished washing, he put on his little pajamas. In fact, it was also a monk's robe, but of a different type. One of the good things about being a monk was that he did not need to dry his hair. Bai Juan watched the little guy walk out of the bathroom with his clothes in his hands. Only then did he subconsciously heave a sigh of relief. Little brother, where is the wash basin? Little Baldy raised his head and asked. Bai Juan was puzzled. Wash basin? Yes, I want to wash my clothes. Little Baldy said with a serious expression, otherwise, if I wash them a little later, they won't be able to dry the next day. Bai Juan originally wanted to say that there was no need to wash those monk robes. He could just throw them away and buy new ones. However, When he thought about his child's character, Bai Juan patted the little guy's head. With Annie Wong around, give the dirty clothes to her. She'll take care of them. No, little Baldy said in a childish voice. I want to wash my own clothes. Annie Wong, wash your clothes because she took your reward. I didn't give Annie Wong any reward. In fact, you can also give me your clothes to wash. Although Master said that every time I wash the clothes, he has to let senior brother wash them again. But Buddha Wooly said that labor is the most glorious. This was clearly what the party members said, not what the temple taught. Bai Juan really didn't know what to do with the little guy. Anyway, the child ate a lot at night, so he just treated it as exercise. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if the little guy didn't have enough food in his stomach. Therefore, Bai Juan did not tell little Baldy that there was such a thing as a washing machine in the world. Instead, he fulfilled little Baldy's wish. Little Baldy arranged the washing powder and soap on the ground. She carried the wash basin and filled it with water. Then, she ran to Bai Juan and asked, Little brother, do you have any clothes that need to be washed? Bai Juan thought for a moment. He really needed to train the little guy's hands-on ability. After all, he was a boy, so he casually threw a white t-shirt to him. Wash it slowly. Yes. Little Baldy finally felt that she was of some use in this house. She placed her little Kasaya and little brother's white t-shirt into the wash basin. She poured the clothes into the wash basin, bent her little body, and washed them very seriously. The white cat was nestled by her feet. It first glanced at Bai Juan, then leaned its head on the little master's instep. Little Baldy was very happy to wash. Bai Juan sat at the side, looking at the child who was seriously struggling with the washing powder bubbles. He watched as she tugged at her t-shirt and rubbed it. When she raised her hand, her little nose and head were full of bubbles. He could not help but laugh. Little Baldy did not know what her little brother was laughing at. She only knew how to be happy. She also had a lot of energy in washing the clothes. Later, Bai Juan finally understood why the master did not let the child wash the clothes. Those rough monk robes were still okay, but that Givenchy t-shirt of his could not be worn anymore. Only this child of his could wash the clothes until they were ruined. Bai Juan felt that no matter what, he still had to praise little Baldy. After all, she had worked hard. However, he also had to remind little Baldy to pay attention to her strength when she washed the clothes in the future. Little Baldy was surprised. Isn't that good? I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to wash it clean, so I used twice as much strength. You don't have to work so hard in the future. Bai Juan wiped the sweat on the child's forehead. Little Baldy nodded and felt around in her bag again. She took out a pacifier and put it in her mouth. Little brother, why don't you ring the clock? My eyelids are heavy. Bai Juan saw her expression and held back his laughter. Where did the thing in your mouth come from? It's always been there, little Baldy said seriously. I bit it when I was sleeping. Bai Juan raised his hand and looked at the time. It was 8:20 p.m. Although children went to bed early, wasn't it a little too early for this child? Why didn't she play games or something? She was probably tired. Bai Juan told himself this and then brought the little guy over. There are many guest rooms in the villa, but you are too young. You will sleep with me first this year. When you are older, you will go to the guest room. Sleep together? Little Baldy's eyes were very clear. A Jew will try her best not to squeeze you out. Bai Juan smiled. All the beds at home are double beds. How can you squeeze me when you are so small? I will grow very tall in the future. Obviously, Bai Juan's words hit little Baldy's sore spot. Bai Juan patted her head and did not say anything. Under normal circumstances, young Master Bai would go to bed at 10:30 p.m. at the earliest. In the military compound, he still slept early. Every day, he had to play games with Master Li and the others. The others would never climb into bed before midnight. The people at home always wanted to hang these brats on the tree and tease them. However, this group of brats had been strong since they were young. Perhaps it was because they were born in the military, but there was always a feeling that they could not beat them no matter how hard they fought. Master Li had just been kicked by his father, so he turned around and went online. After hanging up the game, he sent Bai Juan a WeChat message. Hey brother, come on. Let's have a good fight today. A child who was less than 10 years old had a cell phone. This was indeed very rare in other families. However, the Lee family was different from the Bai family. Master Lee's family was very rich. Although he treated him like trash, his mother would give him whatever he wanted. It was not strange for him to have a cell phone, not to mention the Bai family. Master Bai did not come back often. Bai Juan was the one who made the decision. He could buy whatever he wanted. Usually, the electronic products were the latest. He also did his homework on the tablet. After all, the children in the city now handed in their homework and had to send it to the teacher's mailbox. Bai Juan glanced at WeChat and only replied with 5 words, "I'm not playing. I'm accompanying my younger brother." No way. Master Lee looked at the reply and shook his head. Was Bai Juan really addicted to raising other people's children? It was unlikely. With Master Bai's personality, it was probably only for a day. Chapter 1125. But in fact, Master Lee was wrong this time. Bai Juan was very patient when it came to Little Baldy. He turned off the lights and went to sleep. Little Baldy was afraid that he would squeeze Bai Juan, so he carefully crossed over and slept on the side. Bai Juan went to bed 10 minutes later than Little Baldy. It was said that children were short of water at night. If the weather was too dry, it was easy to have a nosebleed, so it was necessary to prepare some water. This was the first time young Master Bai was so considerate for others. When pouring water, even Annie Wong wanted to help. Bai Juan said that he would do it himself. After testing the temperature of the water, he put a drop of honey in it for the child. Only then did he take the things upstairs. When he entered the room, it was very quiet. Seeing that the little guy was already in a daze, Bai Juan called out in a low voice, "A Jew?" Little bald head grunted and didn't even turn over. Bai Juan rubbed his little palm with his fingers. There were red marks left from the fight today. Did it still hurt? In the future, whoever fought with his child, he would let that person have a taste of what pain was like. Even if the little guy won, it would be the same. Probably because Bai Juan rubbed the painful spot, Little Baldy shrunk his hand like a little turtle. When Bai Juan saw this, he thought that if he had not taken a closer look at night, the little guy definitely would not have told him that his palm was injured. Bai Juan had lived in someone else's house before, so he knew what it felt like to live under someone else's roof. It was because he knew that he cared more about it. Little Baldy was completely asleep. His little hand grabbed Bai Juan's pajamas, and his little face followed suit. Bai Juan did not dislike him at all. He lowered his eyes with a faint smile and gently blew 2 breaths on the little guy's palm. Then he hugged the little guy in his arms. The temperature of the air conditioner in the bedroom was adjusted to the most suitable temperature for human sleep, 25 degrees Celsius. The 9-year-old Bai Juan hugged the 4-year-old Little Baldy and slowly closed his eyes. It had been a long time since he had slept so naturally. In the depths of his memory, it seemed that when he was still very young, his mother would accompany him to have such peace of mind. When Bai Juan woke up, the sky had just brightened. The little guy in his arms seemed to have woken up a long time ago. He looked at him with a pair of big round eyes. Bai Juan lowered his head and looked along Little Baldy's tender legs. His gaze finally landed on a weak and sensitive fatal part of his body. Fortunately, the little guy was a boy. Otherwise, such a sleeping posture would be a little indecent. "Little brother, are you awake?" Little Baldy said excitedly. "I just went downstairs to run one round. Annie Wong said that she would make your favorite wild vegetables today. I will go out with Annie Wong to buy youtiao for you in a while. Annie Wong told me not to disturb you. I just wanted to come up and see you. I didn't want to wake you up. But little brother, I still want to say something." Wooly Buddha said that only by sleeping early and waking up early can one live a long life. Bai Juan was really sleepy. If it was someone else who disturbed him like this, the outcome would definitely be ugly. At the beginning, Bai Juan's expression was a little bad. After listening to the child's nagging, he knew that she was thinking about him. His heart felt warm. He lifted the quilt and covered Little Baldy with it. "Sleep with Big Brother for a while." When Bai Juan closed his eyes, his eyelashes were thick and dense, and his skin was unbelievably delicate. In addition, he was originally noble, so when he looked at him like this, he was even more good-looking. Little Baldy was being carried by Bai Juan, so she could not move around casually. She had to listen to Annie Wong's words. She could not disturb little brother's sleep, but she could not say anything else. Buddha had said that the best plan of the day was in the morning. She still had to go for morning exercise. What should she do? She was really conflicted. Little Baldy frowned and looked in Bai Juan's direction. Seeing that his breathing had calmed down, she could not help but let out a long sigh. She had heard from her master before that some injured children always like to sleep with things in their arms. Little brother must have been injured before. In order to make little brother feel more at ease, it was better for her not to go for morning exercise. She was definitely not looking for an excuse for herself. Even if Buddha knew, he would forgive her. Thinking of this, little Baldy immediately stopped being conflicted. She stretched out her soft little hand and hugged little brother's waist. She yawned and fell asleep just like that. Only then did Bai Juan open his eyes. He looked at the little guy, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. When the two children really woke up, it was 7:40 a.m., not even 8 o'clock a.m. Annie Wong had set up the breakfast. There was millet porridge, small buns, small cold dishes, and the fried dough sticks that little Baldy had always wanted to eat. Bai Juan first carried the child into the bathroom, squeezed toothpaste for her, and let her brush her teeth with the small toothpaste. Two people appeared in the mirror at once. There was Bai Juan's face and the little guy's little head. For some reason, Bai Juan wanted to laugh when he saw it. This feeling of not having to be alone was really good. Previously, he was not willing to adopt anyone. To be honest, Bai Juan had always been a very selfish person. He did not want any accidents to happen in his life. If it were not for his grandfather's insistence and his master's persuasion, he definitely would not have gone to the temple to bring little Baldy back. But now, just as his grandfather had hoped, he seemed to have a human aura. Moreover, Bai Juan was very clear that this was all because of the little guy in front of him. If it were someone else, he would not have such a feeling. In the future, this person would be his. That was probably how he felt. He had to be responsible for the little guy. After all, a Jew was still so young. She would definitely be bullied when she went out. But in fact, everyone knew that with little Baldy's ability to fight, it was already good enough that she did not bully others when she went out. How could she be bullied? Just as Bai Juan was distracted, little Baldy licked her little lips and said seriously, "Little brother, this toothpaste is very delicious. It's completely different from the one my master bought for me in the past." Bai Juan was speechless. This attribute of being able to eat anything had to be changed immediately. Little Baldy only tasted the taste. She was not stupid enough to really eat the toothpaste. This was the cutest. She gulped down a big mouthful of water. After rinsing her mouth, she lowered her little head and spat out the water in the sink. Bai Juan patted his child's head and wiped her face. Then, the two of them walked out of the bathroom. Annie Wong felt gratified when she saw this scene. After Bai Juan's parents passed away, she came to the Bai family. At that time, the Bai family had already changed 3 cooking aunties. The old chief was often not at home, leaving the young master alone. In the beginning, those cooking aunties still cooked for the young master obediently. Later on, they began to be scheming. It was said that there was once an auntie who wanted to take the Bai family's money while the old chief was not around. After being discovered by the young master, she said that she wanted to buy delicious food for the young master and told him not to talk nonsense. Chapter 11:26. At that time, the young master was indifferent to everything. He did not even inform the old master. He directly called the adjutant in and dismissed that auntie. Such an action was undoubtedly a sign of overmaturity for a 5-year-old child. The old chief's worry also began at that time, because after that time, the old chief consulted a psychiatrist for the young master. At that time, the psychiatrist only gave the old chief one sentence, saying that the young master was still young and not obvious. In the future, whether he walked on the military or political path, such a person would only do things ruthlessly because in his heart there was no love at all. In fact, if he was a little more extreme, he would become a dark figure. Once he committed a crime, he was even more vicious than a real outlaw. Now, that little Jew was here, looking at the way the young master spoiled the child. He was really no different from other people of the same age. Except for when it came to dealing with little Jew, the young master liked to do it himself. He was more composed than young Master Li and the others, but the smile between his brows was warm. Little Baldy was already sitting on a small chair and eating with a small spoon. When they were almost done eating, someone came in from outside. It was Lin Zuin, Master Li, and the others who had talked about Little Baldy yesterday. When Lin Zuin first entered the room, her small face was a little ugly. She had already tried her best to smile. Children nowadays were different from before. They knew a lot of things at such a young age. Even if she did not like Little Baldy in her heart, Lin Ziwen would not show it. She only said to Bai Juan, "I was wrong yesterday. Since a Jew has entered the Bai family, she is a member of the Bai family. In the future, I will treat a Jew like my own younger brother. Brother Bai Juan, can you not be angry with me? I didn't mean to say that about a Jew." Behind Lin Ziwen was a group of other children, both men and women. Everyone stood there and looked at Bai Juan. This undoubtedly showed Bai Juan's status as the king of children in the military compound. Little Baldy was eating happily. He raised his head from the big bowl and sized up the people who came in with his clear and bright eyes. Bai Juan patted the child's head. "Don't look around when you eat." Little Baldy was very obedient. He didn't look at anyone anymore and stuffed a small vegetable bun into his mouth. His cheeks were puffed up and he looked very cute. Looking at the way she ate, Li Hailu felt hungry. He licked his lips and looked at Bai Juan. "Do you still have vegetable buns in your house?" "Yes." Bai Juan glanced at him and said indifferently, "There are still 3 left. I want to leave them for a Jew as snacks." Li Hailu truly felt that Bai Juan was someone who didn't want him as a brother after having a younger brother. "Forget it. I won't eat today. I'll eat at your house tomorrow." As Little Gangster Li spoke, he turned his head and shouted at the top of his voice, "Andy Wong, when you cook tomorrow, cook mine too." Little Baldy did not understand. She turned around and asked Bai Juan, "Why did you come over to eat tomorrow? You can eat lunch and dinner today." "Little brother, has Master Li always been so stupid? Is that why he got a duck egg in the exam?" Little Gangster Li was speechless. Inexplicably, he felt that his intelligence was being looked down upon. However, the little monk was right. "Annie Wong, I'll eat here for lunch today." Bai Juan put down the wooden chopsticks in his hand. He did not even look at Lin Ziwen, who was standing beside him. He tidied up his sleeves and said, "I can't eat at noon today. I'm going to take a Jew out to buy clothes in a while." "Buy clothes? Go shopping?" Li Hailu's eyes lit up. He grabbed Bai Juan and said, Take me. You don't know how strict my father is on me now. I can only run to your house. He won't let me go anywhere. I'm going to grow hair on my body. I'm going shopping and eating Burger King. You can't eat Burger King. You have to give a Jew a vegetarian diet." Bai Juan pushed his hand away. Li Hailu did not care about food anymore. "I can eat anything as long as I can go out. You treat me to a meal." Bai Juan had always known how to trick his brother. Li Hailu gritted his teeth. "Add a condition. Let me copy your homework." "Sure," Bai Juan said as he picked up Little Baldy, who was full. The rest of the children looked at each other. Lin Ziwen also wanted to go out. After hearing the news, she even went home and asked the driver to specially prepare a car. She originally wanted to follow the Bai family's car all the way. She did not expect that she would waste too much time combing her hair. When she went out, Bai Juan's car was already gone. The Bai family's car was big to begin with. It was a military Hummer. Other than the driver, it could also seat about 5 adults. It was more than enough for 5 children to sit in it. Other than Li Hailu, there were 2 other people in it. One of the children spoke very little. From the beginning to the end, he only sat there. The other was chatting happily with Li Hailu. "It's all thanks to little Gio wanting to buy clothes. Otherwise, my father would definitely not let me out. This is a good reason. Then can we all use little Gio as a topic in the future? I think this method will work." Little boys who were close to 10 years old were the most troublesome, especially those in the imperial capital. They had clearly not reached puberty yet, but they were already like little adults. All day long, they kept saying that they would wait until they entered junior high school and must find a school belle to be their girlfriend. In other words, they already knew how to look at beautiful girls on the street. "Look, what do you think of that one? Her legs are so long." Little Baldy was held in by Juan's hand. Every time she saw Li Hailu pointing at those young ladies, she would say Amit Ba. Then, she raised her little face and asked Bai Juan, "Little brother, why does Li Hailu always have a soft spot for female tigers? He's a fool with a lot of money." After Bai Juan said that, he did not forget to add, "So, remember, when you grow up, don't be like him. It's not handsome to be unable to walk when you see a girl." Little Baldy nodded very seriously. "Little brother, don't worry. I'm not that stupid." Li Hailu, who had been attacked countless times, no longer wanted to listen to what the two brothers behind him were saying. In short, he was always used as a reference for bad things. Li Hailu was already used to it. To him, as long as he was allowed to come out and take a breather, life was beautiful. Little Baldy had never shopped in a mall before. The distance from the parking lot to the other side of the overpass was not short. This was also the reason why Bai Juan chose to go out at around 9 o'clock. Generally, large malls, such as the Great U City National Trade Center, opened at 10 o'clock. At this time, the sun would not be very bright, and there were few people, so it would not squeeze the children. Before they entered the mall, the big screen had already started to display advertisements for clothing brands. Most of them were endorsements by celebrities, and they looked very fashionable. Chapter 11:27. Little Baldy was extremely curious. Her round eyes looked left and right, and the white cat lying on her head also turned with her. When she was on the mountain, she had never seen these things. There were so many people, and there were so many cars under the bridge. Moreover, there were tall buildings everywhere. It was really tall. Little Baldy raised her head and looked at the big house with her little face. "Let's go, little antique. We'll show you what a modern metropolis is." Masterly reached out and hooked little Baldy's neck over. Bai Juan glanced at him. He immediately retracted his hand. "Am I not used to it? You lead, you lead." He and Bai Juan grew up together. This was the first time he realized that this guy had a brother complex. Bai Juan ignored this unreliable little friend. He knew that there were not many things in the temple, so he explained to little Baldy one by one what she saw. Little Baldy did look like a person from ancient times, but even so, she held Bai Juan's hand all the way, until the big screen of the mall began to play an advertisement for children's clothing. Little Baldy suddenly stopped. She didn't even hold Bai Juan's hand. She ran to the opposite side of the screen. Her little hands grabbed the railing and looked at the star that appeared on the screen. The other party was less than 10 years old, but he was wearing the hottest black skeleton t-shirt this year. His skin was very white, as if he didn't need foundation to show the unique temperament of a vampire. Little Baldy suddenly stood behind and stopped moving. The other children also stopped. Masterly followed her gaze and glanced over there. He snorted disapprovingly. "So it's him. He looks like a gigolo. I really don't understand. Why do the girls in the class all like this guy called Shangxia? Is he very handsome?" Handsome. Little Baldy had never been so hostile to anyone. Her eyes were cold. "Don't talk about him. If I hear you talk about him again in the future, I'll hit you." Little Gangster Lee was dumbfounded. What was going on? Could it be that a Jew was also chasing stars? Bai Juan also frowned. He thought for a moment and reached out to bring the child to his side. "A Jew? You can't just beat people up." "I know," Little Baldy said in a muffled voice. Bai Juan still didn't want to scold the child too much. "Be good. I'll take you to buy clothes." "Yes." Although Little Baldy agreed, he turned around to take a look every step he took. When the advertisement was gone, he seemed to be in a good mood. Bai Juan also noticed the change in the child. He thought that she was happy because she was going to buy new clothes. In fact, Bai Juan did not know. The reason why Little Baldy was so happy was because he saw his brother here. Her real brother, Bailey Shangxia. When they were on the mountain, Little Baldy would always receive all kinds of things. They were all sent to him by his second brother. There were photos of her parents, as well as photos of her two brothers. There were also 4 people together, deliberately leaving space for her to take a group photo. Little Baldy was very clear that her brothers were all waiting for her to return. Because he couldn't see his brother, seeing Bailey Shangxia appear on the screen was the best thing for Little Baldy. He was really happy. Buddha Wooly must have heard his wish. Of course, he also had to thank the little brother for bringing him out. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to see his brother. It was just that Li Hailu was a little hateful, but he had already forgiven him. After all, his brother was so handsome, he would definitely be envied by others. He understood that. Thinking of this, Little Baldy nodded his big head as he did what he wanted to do. Bai Juan looked at him from the side and raised his eyebrows in confusion. What's wrong? Nothing. It's just that a Jew is so happy today. Little Baldy said seriously, I'm even happier than eating 10 bowls of white rice. Bai Juan was speechless. Today's lunch could be directly eaten with white rice. A group of half-grown children coming to the mall to shop was always very eye-catching. In addition, these children were all very good-looking. The most eye-catching thing was that there was a little monk among them. Many people saw it and wanted to take a photo of little Baldy. After all, he looked too cute in a monk's robe. Bai Juan was protecting the child at the side. After arriving at the mall, he went directly to the place where sunglasses were sold and chose a pair of small sunglasses for little Baldy to block the sun. Li Hailu also tried it on at the side. However, the 4 boys' greatest interest was to dress up little Baldy. After choosing the sunglasses, they greeted little Baldy with small school bags and small watches one after another. The 4 boys were having a great time. Looking at the things hanging on little Baldy's body, they felt a sense of accomplishment. In fact, Bai Juan would not really go out without people. It was just that the Bai family had always kept a low profile. 2 special forces soldiers in casual clothes followed the children at a leisurely pace. Outsiders could not tell at all. After buying these bits and pieces, Bai Juan brought the child directly to the 3rd floor. It was specially for children's clothes, and the brands were very well known. Bai Juan felt that the most important thing was to buy 2 pajamas and a few pairs of underwear for the child first. He could not always let a Jew sleep in a monk's robe. The quality of the clothes on the 3rd floor was generally very good, and the material was soft to the touch. Bai Juan immediately took a fancy to one of the yellow kitten pajamas. Such pajamas would definitely look good on a Jew. She even had a pair of furry little ears. She was very cute. Although the color was a little feminine, a Jew was only 4 years old. It should not be a problem for her to wear any color. With this thought in mind, young master Bai wanted the salesperson to take down the pajamas. It was the first time the salesperson had seen a few children buying clothes alone. She tiptoed and looked behind them. Then, she said indifferently, You can only try it on with your parents. Bai Juan heard this and opened Li Hailu's backpack. He took out a card and casually handed it to the salesperson. His voice was very indifferent and did not have any other meaning. Take the clothes down. We want to try them on. Only then did the salesperson realize that even if the other party was a child, in a place like the capital, there were many children of officials who would come to shop by themselves. Now that she saw the card in Bai Juan's hand, she immediately changed her attitude. She took the cat pajamas and handed it over. Young master, you really have good taste. This pajamas is especially good in our shop. Who do you want to buy it for? What's the size? My brother will wear it. As Bai Juan said this, he pulled little Baldy over and let the salesperson see for herself. After the salesperson saw the little person's height, she immediately took the smallest pajamas for her and wanted to follow little Baldy into the fitting room. Give me the clothes. I'll have my brother wear them. Chapter 1128. Bai Juan was not at ease leaving the child in the hands of such a powerful salesperson, even if she changed her clothes. Moreover, although a Jew was very young, she was still a boy. From the perspective of self-esteem, it was more appropriate for him to go in and help the child change her clothes. It had to be said that young Master Bai had considered everything very thoroughly. However, there was one thing that he had not expected at all, and that was that little Baldy would be a girl. In order to make a Jew comfortable, Bai Juan asked the salesperson for 2 pairs of underwear with black and white pandas printed on them. He was prepared to change the child's clothes from top to bottom. Little Jew also felt that compared to a woman, she wanted the little brother to change her clothes more. This woman at the foot of the mountain also looked like a tiger. Besides, she was a boy. Boys shouldn't let women look at their bodies. She still understood this little principle. Yes. Little Jew nodded her big head again. Bai Juan held the child's hand and entered the fitting room, leaving Master Li and the others to look at other things. The monk's robe had a drill. Little Jew was like a little turtle. She first broke free from it, then looked at Bai Juan and blinked her eyes. Take off the inner shirt and underwear as well. As Bai Juan said this, he lowered his head to tidy up the child's pajamas. When a Jew put them on, She only needed to open her arms. Little Baldy was very obedient. She took off the inner shirt when she was told to. She bit the corner of her clothes with her small mouth and revealed her bare little body with a whoosh. When Bai Juan lowered his head to pick out the clothes, he also took off the last bit of underwear. The corners of young Master Bai's mouth were still curled up. When he turned around, the clothes in his hand fell to the ground along with his wallet with a snap. For the first time in his life, young Master Bai experienced what it meant to be dumbfounded. Outside, Master Li and the others heard the sound of the fitting room. They thought that something had happened, so they knocked on the door. "What's wrong, Master Bai? Is it that the child's clothes are particularly difficult to wear? Open the door and let me in. I'll help you put them on." "No need." Bai Juan took a deep breath and stretched out his hand to wrap little Baldy up. He shouted behind him in a slightly irritable manner, "If you dare to sneak in, you don't have to think about copying today's homework." Master Li, who had already put his hand on the doorknob, withdrew his hand in embarrassment and touched the bridge of his nose. Bai Juan was really too scary. He even knew what he wanted to do next. Little Baldy did not understand why her brother had suddenly become like this. She looked at Bai Juan in a daze and said, "Brother, didn't you say that you were going to dress me? It's so uncomfortable to be wrapped around me like this." Bai Juan lowered his head to look at the younger brother in his arms. "Fuck your little brother. This was clearly a girl. Why didn't his stupid master let him know when he mistakenly thought that little Jew was a girl? Could it be that master did it on purpose?" After thinking this through, Bai Juan's expression was not very good. In general, he felt like he had been struck by lightning. His original plan was to raise his child into an indomitable young man. Now, how do you raise a girl? He had no experience at all. "Little brother, what's wrong with you?" Little Baldy scratched his big head. He looks like he's going to lose his mind. Bai Juan's mind was still spinning. His master deliberately did not want him to know. What about a Jew? Why didn't she say anything? Wait a minute. The child seemed to have said from the day she went down the mountain, "The woman at the foot of the mountain is a tiger." She even made it clear that she was a boy. Could it be? When Bai Juan thought of this, his eyes flashed and he asked tentatively, "A Jew, do you think I'm a man or a woman?" "A man." Little Baldy stretched out his small hand and touched Bai Juan's head. "Why are you asking such a stupid question? Could it be that you have been infected by Master Li's negative IQ?" Master Li was speechless. "What about you? Are you a man or a woman?" Bai Juan continued to ask. Little Baldy put his two small hands on his waist, and even his cheeks puffed up. "A boy." "Little brother, the questions you asked today are so strange. I'm so manly, and I'm going to be the abbot of the temple in the future. Of course, I'm a boy. Look at my head. It's already shaved like a little monk. The temple doesn't accept girls. If you ask me like this, it's obvious that you're uncultured. It's really insulting woolly Buddha." "Manly." Bai Juan reached out and covered his forehead. He suddenly felt a headache. When he first brought the child over, he did feel that a child like little Gio would definitely be a boyfriend when he grew up. For this, he felt that it was not bad. After all, he did not like petty boys. But little Gio was a girl. A girl. Bai Juan felt that what he needed to do the most now was to let the child realize the fact that he was a girl. "Little Gio, come, sit properly." Bai Juan swore that he had never been so patient. Little Baldy tugged at the clothes wrapped around his body in confusion. "Aren't you going to wear clothes?" "Yes, you have to wear clothes first." Bai Juan looked at the little guy in front of him. He was holding a small underwear in his hand. He was really embarrassed. "You wear them yourself." Little Baldy nodded. "Okay." The child was indeed obedient, but the kitten pajamas were a little difficult to wear. Bai Juan turned his back and waited for a long time. He had also done a lot of psychological preparation. Little Baldy stretched out his little hand with great effort. "Little brother, is this how you wear this?" Bai Juan turned his head and saw that the little guy had worn the kitten pajamas like a barrel sack. The clothes hung loosely on little Baldy's body, making his eyes even bigger. He still looked a little funny, like a kitten that had been thrown aside. Bai Juan gritted his teeth. He thought that even if little Gio was a girl, she was only 4 years old. It should be fine for him to help her wear the pajamas outside. "Little Gio, be good. Raise your hands." Bai Juan squatted down, just enough so that his eyes could be at the same level as little Baldy's. Little Baldy nodded, his two little arms obediently stretched up. He looked so obedient and cute that Bai Juan subconsciously kissed his forehead. After the kiss, young Master Bai paused for a moment. The little guy was fine. He rubbed his forehead and smiled sweetly at Bai Juan. He continued to raise his little hand seriously and said, "Little brother, fortunately, you are a man." I read in the Buddhist scriptures that a person with a calm mind cannot be kissed by a girl. If that happens, I will break the precept. After breaking the precept, I will not be able to be the abbot of the temple. How obsessed was he to be in charge? Child Bai also smiled. Even if she was a girl, it didn't matter. She was his. However, there was one thing that had to be changed. That was the education policy. Chapter 1129. Bai Juan reached out and straightened the tail on the child's pajamas. Then, he turned her sleeve. In less than half a minute, a cute little tabby cat came out of the oven, steaming hot. Little Baldy followed behind Bai Juan, just like that, like a little mascot. Li Hailu watched from the side and couldn't help but exclaim, "Fuck, what's that saying? Buddha relies on gold, and people rely on clothes. A Jew looks really good in pajamas. Come, little Jew, come and take a photo with me. I'll make those who don't have a younger brother envious to death." Bai Juan pulled the child back and said to Li Hailu, "I have something to discuss with you." Li Hailu was stunned. That was Master Bai. Master Bai had done everything by himself since he was young. When had he ever been kind to others? Li Hailu was excited and shouted, "What's the matter? What's the matter? Let's talk about it later." Bai Juan glanced at the other two friends beside him. "Let's find a place first." Li Hailu suggested, "The Burger King is downstairs. You forgot that a Jew can't eat meat." Xiao Lin reminded him. He had never liked to talk, and his voice was cold. If he did not like little Baldy, he definitely would not have let her notice him. Li Hailu patted his head. "We can only order cola, ice cream, and fries. A Jew definitely hasn't eaten fries before. Children love fries." "Fries?" Little Baldy leaned over with her big bald head. "What's that?" Li Hailu spread his hands, meaning look. "Okay, let's go to the Burger King." Bai Juan held little Baldy's hand and wanted to leave. Little Baldy twisted her little body. "Monk's robe, my monk's robe." According to the child's personality, if he said to throw it away, it would definitely not be allowed. Bai Juan asked the salesperson to put the monk's robe on the child. He brought the little tabby cat downstairs. Not being able to eat meat was simply torture for boys. Little Baldy also saw it. She raised her small face and said to little Gangster Lee, who was in line, "You can order meat, but a Jew doesn't eat meat. You can eat it. I want to cultivate." Woolly Buddha said that you can't ask others to eat vegetarian like you. You have to be tolerant. When you grow up, you don't need to be abbot. When Master Lee heard this, he turned around and glanced at Bai Juan. "Master Bai, do you feel that the words that your child says are always so likable? They're all great principles that even adults can't do. What's that called again?" "Great wisdom appears to be stupidity." Bai Juan's voice was very indifferent. "You guys order. I'll bring little Nine to the big table to sit." Little Gangster Lee made an okay gesture. Okay. Without the consideration of meat, little Gangster Lee was having a great time ordering. He ordered all kinds of Overlord chicken strips and fragrant spicy chicken wings. After all, they still had to eat lunch later, so they had to eat some snacks to fill their stomachs first. At that time, he didn't know little Baldy's appetite, so he ordered an ice cream cone and a small serving of fries for the little girl. After all, Bai Juan was so obsessed with his brother. If he ordered too much and little Jew couldn't digest it, Bai Juan would definitely drag him over and beat him up. His plate was just right. Little Gangster Lee confidently carried the food to the long table and inserted a straw into the Coke. Usually, his father was strict and didn't let him drink these things at all. Now, he could finally drink without any scruples. On a hot summer day, drinking a mouthful of Coke filled with ice was extremely satisfying. Little Jew stood there and looked at her brothers and then at her own. It was a little too little. "Why? By the way, brother, what do you want to discuss with us?" Every time little Gangster Lee spoke, his voice was mixed. Bai Juan glanced at the child standing at the side and saw that little Baldy was circling around his cattail. His voice was slightly lowered. A Jew is a girl. Little Gangsterly spat out a mouthful of coke. Little Baldy and Bai Juan had both learned martial arts since they were young. Their reaction speed was extremely fast, and they dodged in a flash. The other two people were not so lucky. They were spat in the face by Little Gangsterly. No, cough, cough, cough. Master Bai, what did you say? Little Gangster Lee's eyes widened. Our little monk is a girl? A delicate girl, like the prettiest girl in the academy? Bai Juan looked at him calmly. That's my girl, not yours. I'm not a girl. Little Baldy was very angry. She looked at Little Gangsterly seriously and denied it very firmly. Little Gangsterly didn't listen to Little Baldy and only looked at Bai Juan. The other two people also wiped their faces with a tissue. After one of them gave Little Gangsterly a punch, they also waited for Bai Juan's answer. I found out when I was changing her clothes just now. Bai Juan made the decision, so it definitely couldn't be fake. Little Gangsterly was dumbfounded. He rubbed his handsome face. But Little Jew said that she's not a girl. She thinks she's a boy. Bai Juan rubbed his aching forehead. That's why I wanted to discuss with you guys how to make her believe that she's a girl. Little Baldy was still shaking her head solemnly. I'm not a girl. Little brother, I'm not a girl. I'm not a girl. When the little person denied something, she really buzzed like a little fly. However, she was always cuter than ordinary children. Her voice was not loud, and she even spun in circles to chase the cattail on his pajamas. Don't doubt, this was the latest toy that Little Baldy found for him. Master Bai, can you let her be quiet first? Little Gangsterly didn't know why. Why did the little person keep spinning around him? His eyes were dizzy. Bai Juan was worried that the child would spin too much, which was not good for her body. He stopped Little Baldy and fed her a French fry. Little Baldy was really angry at first. She didn't understand. She was clearly the person who was going to be the abbot in the future. Why did Little Brother think that she was a girl? But Little Brother was very good to her. He even fed her a very delicious thing. It was sweet and crisp. It was a little like a baked potato, but it was better than a baked potato. The little person was immediately happy. She temporarily put aside the question of whether she was a boy or a girl and raised her little face to accept Bai Juan's feeding. You still have a way. Little Gangsterly gave Bai Juan a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. If he had to take care of a 4-year-old child all day long, he would go crazy. Fortunately, Little Jew was still quite obedient. It was just that the question of whether she was a boy or a girl. He had never met a child who would mistake his own gender. Ajuz was so firm. It will definitely be difficult to change her perception of herself. Brother Bai, haven't you been to Shaolin Temple before? Since you and a Jew are from the same sect, do you want to ask your master how to deal with this matter? Chapter 1130. Bai Juan listened to Xiao Lin and the others' opinions and felt that this was the only feasible option. There has never been a signal on the mountain, so it's very difficult to contact Master. Go back. Li Hailu bit the chicken wing in his mouth. Are you going to send little Aju away? Hearing that she was going to be sent away, Little Baldy stopped chasing after her cattail and looked at Bai Juan with her big eyes. Don't talk nonsense. I won't send Aju away. Bai Juan let the child continue to play. His eating manners were obviously more gentlemanly. Moreover, you can't go back at all. What do you mean? Li Hailu looked at Bai Juan blankly and lowered his voice. Didn't little Aju say that she wants to go back to be an abbot in the future? Why can't she go back? Bai Juan glanced at Little Baldy. Seeing that the child was focused on eating, he whispered to Little Gangster Li, all those who are fated to leave the temple will get lost when they go to the mountain again. Unless they are led by the master himself. Or what? Li Hailu had never seen such a magical temple before. Bai Juan paused for a moment, his eyes deep. Or one of the Buddhas. Li Hailu felt that the world was a fantasy. Then Little Baldy won't be able to go back. Bai Juan rubbed his fingers as if he was deep in thought. I always feel that a Jew is different. What's different? Li Hailu still felt that his thoughts could not keep up with Master Bai's. Bai Juan narrowed his eyes. The temple has never accepted women. This is an unclean reflection of Buddhism. Master is not such a person who does not know his limits. Moreover, little Aju entered the temple too early. She is the only one who entered the temple from birth. So what do you mean? Li Heilu's brain capacity was obviously not enough. Bai Juan did not continue. He just looked at him coldly. With your IQ, you won't understand. Fuck. Li Heilu bit the chicken wing fiercely. Shaolin took a sip of Coke. Maybe there's a way to try. What way? School is about to start. Little Aju is 4 years old. Find a connection and let her follow us to school first. You want a 4-year-old child to follow us to the 4th grade. Let her have more contact with girls. Aren't there many girls in our class? But she can still go to kindergarten, right? They're just a bunch of little brats in kindergarten. How could they teach her the difference between men and women? Moreover, little Aju is so smart. It shouldn't be a problem for her to go there for only 1 semester. That would require the approval of the family. At this time, Child Bai said, I agree. Little Gangsterly hesitated. Without Grandpa Bai's permission? Bai Juan wiped the corner of the child's mouth. I'm Aju's adopter. Grandpa is busy at the border, so there's no need for him to come over for this kind of thing. Shaolin, you still have to ask Annie Xiao for help with school matters. No problem. The Xiao family's maternal grandfather's side had been literary heroes for generations, and Annie Xiao was the school's principal. She had been leading their class along the way. What's more, the primary school they went to was in the military, so it was different from the ordinary ones. It shouldn't be too difficult for Aju to go in. Child Bai finally solved one of his worries. Little Baldy was still burying his head in eating the fries. After a while, he finished the fries and began to eat another bag of ketchup. Child Bai knew at a glance that the child hadn't eaten enough. He stood up and went to the window to ask for 2 more large fries for the child. Little Baldy was really happy this time. He stretched out his little claws and hugged Bai Juan's leg. His little face was pink as he said, Little brother is still the best. Little Gangsterly only let me eat a little. Although Woolly Buddha said that you should be grateful when others give you something, such a small amount of potato chips is really not enough for Aju to eat. Little Gangsterly, who had been shot countless times, was speechless. However, the little girl was still very good to Little Gangsterly. She was very grateful and gave half of the fries that Bai Juan gave her to her brothers. She even gave Little Gangsterly an extra bag of ketchup. Little Gangsterly was so touched that he wanted to hug Little Baldy and kiss her a few times. However, he was kicked aside by Bai Juan. Shaolin was in charge of taking photos. With a click of his phone, he saved Little Gangster Lee's photo in his photo album. Although the few of them had been bickering and their personalities were different, it could be seen that they had a good relationship. Many people were envious of having such a childhood. During lunch, Shaolin even took a group photo for everyone. In the photo, Shaolin was holding his finger and another boy was hugging Little Gangster Lee's neck. The most eye-catching one was Little Baldy, who was sitting in Bai Juan's arms. The cat's ears stood up, and it did not know that it was taking a photo. It had a piece of vegetable in its mouth and looked at the camera adorably. As soon as this photo was posted on WeChat Moments, the grandparents in the courtyard began to like Shaolin. Only after going out alone, Lin Zuan, who did not find Bai Juan and the others, fiercely threw her phone on the seat. She lay on the car and cried. She continued to cry until she returned home at night. Lin Ziwen's mother was also a child protector. When she saw her daughter crying, her heart ached. She first scolded the adjutant, then pulled Lin Ziwen to ask what was going on. Lin Ziwen hummed and wiped her tears. It's all because of that little country bumpkin from the village. She thinks that she is a member of the Bai family after entering the Bai family. She pesters brother Bai Juan all day long and won't let go. Mom, I hate that little country bumpkin. I hate it to death. Everything she sees is strange. She has never seen the world at all. She only knows how to spend the Bai family's money. You can't say that. Mother Lin glanced at her, but since she's from the outside, she should follow some rules. This child is obviously uneducated. She doesn't know the difference between cloud and mud at all. When I see this child next time, I'll help you say a few words. A little country bumpkin from the mountain dares to embarrass my daughter. These words were exactly what Lin Ziwen wanted, and the girl immediately laughed. Don't underestimate a girl's jealousy, especially this kind of little girl who had been wrong since she was young. When she did things, she was not more restrained than the adults. Knowing that her mother would help her deal with that little country bumpkin, she was relieved. You only know about Brother by Juin all day long. Mother Lin smiled and tapped Lin Ziwen's nose. What? Brother by Juin is mine to begin with. What's going on with this inexplicable little country bumpkin? In my opinion, why don't you ask your father to make a trip to the Bai family and help you set up a betrothal with your brother by Juin? Mom! Lin Ziwen stomped her feet. When Mother Lin said this, she actually had this plan. Although compared to the Bai family, the Lin family was a little weaker. But their family was not bad either. In addition, they were all on the same political front. Moreover, her daughter liked Bai Juin to begin with. Bai Juin's future was limitless. If the two families could become even closer, that would be the best. Chapter 1131. In the military compound, they were actually more particular about matching in terms of social status than ordinary families. However, these details were usually not known to people who were far away from the circle. It was actually a very simple matter. Usually, what we learned was that the rich second generation married a celebrity and thought that they were very powerful. However, what really made the celebrities squeeze their heads to enter was the military and political circle. But no military officer would marry a celebrity. To put it cruelly, they only knew how to play. From the moment they were born, it meant that their other half had to be from the same family. If not, at the very least, they had to come from a well-off family and be well-educated. Mother Lin was confident that the Bai family would also choose her daughter. After all, it was obvious. Right now, she only had one thing in mind, and that was to find an opportunity to teach that poor kid from the mountain a lesson. Since they were here, they should follow the rules here. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when it was close to dusk, it suddenly started to rain sporadically in the imperial capital. The group of children who were the backbone of the group had finally returned. Bai Juin was still holding little Aju in his arms. The ground was full of water, so he did not let her go down. When the rest of the children saw the Bai family's car, they all recognized the license plate number. One by one, they all came out. 4 of the 5 came to ask Bai Juin to copy their homework. After all, there were only 7 days left until the end of the summer vacation. If they did not take advantage of this time to copy what they could, when school reopened, they would definitely owe more debts. The most annoying thing was the diary that the teacher had given them. Oh my God! Wasn't it making things difficult for a group of big boys to record their daily lives like girls? Could it be that they had to write in their diary every day, "Ah, the weather is so good today. I stayed at home and played online games for the whole day." Or, "Today, I went to the East Courtyard to fight with Brother Bai and the others. It was so cool." No matter what they wrote, the teacher would definitely let them call their parents. Therefore, the boys should not be allowed to write in their diary for summer homework. Wasn't this clearly asking them to lie to the teacher? If they did not want the teacher to criticize them, they could only write, "The weather is good today. I dream of the red chamber at home for the whole day." Or they could also write, "It's raining outside, so I can't go out with my parents. I obediently cooked a sumptuous dinner at home. That was why. Teacher, don't play tricks anymore. Can you be more sincere?" The above were the original words of Li Hailu. Little Baldy couldn't understand these things. Firstly, she didn't know what League of Legends was. Secondly, she had to write her diary every day. She was already used to it. Therefore, a group of boys sat beside the coffee table, sticking their little butts out and copying homework, while a few others held their noses and racked their brains to write diaries. Little Baldy also took his own diary. She felt that this kind of learning atmosphere was very good, although Li Hailu looked a little silly with a horizontal bar on his head. However, this did not affect Little Baldy's mood. She lowered her head and clenched her fists as she wrote seriously. "Today, little brother took me out to buy clothes. The clothes were very interesting. Xiao Bai and I have been chasing our tails. We were really very happy. Most importantly, I even saw him. He is even more handsome than in the photos. No wonder so many people like him. Moi, Woolly Buddha. Thank you. Thank you, Buddha." When the child was writing in her diary, Bai Juin was standing behind her. He was holding a bottle of BLK mineral water in his hand. When the youth drank the water, his side profile was especially beautiful, especially under the light from the corner of his eye. Even the tip of his nose seemed to emit a gentle light. When he saw the last sentence that little Ajou wrote, most importantly, I even saw him. Bai Juan frowned. Although many people in their class liked that celebrity called Bailey Shangxia, he did not expect that Ajou would also like this type of boy. Little brother, I've finished writing in my diary. Little Baldy stood up and reached out to touch her stomach. Shouldn't we eat? Bai Juan smiled. Seeing that the tail behind her was still swaying, he bent down and fed her a mouthful of water. Annie Wong is still doing it. We can eat in a while. Yes. Little Baldy listened to Bai Juan the most. Seeing that he said so, she patrolled Li Hailu and the others with her little hands behind her back. In the end, she came to the conclusion that making this group of people do homework was more uncomfortable than making them eat durian. Little Baldy also noticed that Xiao Lin did not seem to need to write at all. He was standing in the living room and playing a game of killing fruits in front of the huge screen on the wall. Halfway through, Xiao Lin called and asked Little Baldy to kill it for him. Little Baldy also glanced at the side just now and cleverly learned how to play. As soon as she started, there were a few clattering sounds. When Xiao Lin came back, Little Baldy just happened to do a small somersault backward. Her tail swept on the ground, and she landed perfectly. Xiao Lin was already dumbfounded. When he looked at the screen again, she actually broke the record. The record that he had been killing for an entire summer vacation was broken by a 4-year-old child just like that. No one who was born in the military compound admitted defeat. Xiao Lin narrowed his eyes and pulled up the shooting game. He played a round first, so of course his results were good. After all, he was someone who had touched a real gun before. However, what he did not expect was that Ajou actually shot more accurately than him and used less time. She was simply beating him. Ajou, is this really your first time playing this game? I don't even know how to use this gun. I didn't press the first button just now. Otherwise, I would have fired all the shots. Xiao Lin was speechless. So the one you missed was the equipment you weren't familiar with? Xiao Lin turned his head and wanted to find Bai Juan for comfort. Your younger brother. Oh no, it's your younger sister. Is she really not a mechanical genius? You're too stupid. Bai Juan took the gun from his hand and then put on the game blindfold. With 3 bangs, each shot was a 10-ring crosshair. Moreover, it took very little time. Not only did he fire 10 shots in a row, but he also raised the difficulty level. Xiao Lin felt that it was a wrong decision to come to Bai Juan for comfort. This was simply a pair of siblings who tortured people to death without paying for their lives. After seeing Bai Juan's marksmanship, Little Baldy ignited an unprecedented desire to fight. She wanted to compete with her little brother. However, Bai Juan would not compete with her no matter what. He took her to wash her hands and fed the child a large bowl of dumplings. The dumplings were stuffed with cabbage. There were fried dough sticks in it, so it tasted especially delicious. Little Baldy ate until her stomach was bulging. Just as she was about to hug her little brother to sleep, Bai Juan said to her, "We can't sleep together in the future." Chapter 1132. What? Little Baldy didn't understand. Everything was fine yesterday. Why did little brother suddenly change? Didn't he say that he wouldn't send her away? Bai Juan looked down at her. Ajou, haven't you always thought that you were a boy? It's not that. Little Baldy seriously corrected Bai Juan. It's that I'm a boy. Little brother, don't forget that I'm going to be the host. Bai Juan facepalmed. It was happening again. All right, you're going to be the host, but as for whether you're a man or a woman, we'll talk about that later. Bai Juan patted the child's head. It's not convenient for the two of us to sleep together now. You have to have your own room. Little Baldy's eyes were wide open, and he didn't say anything else. His originally excited little face had lost the brightness from yesterday. Bai Juan did not want to see the child like this, so he could only coax him with food. Be good. Let Annie Wong take you to sleep. Come, Ajou, follow Annie Wong. Annie Wong also knew the gender of the child. Young master had instructed her to be more careful in the future. Things like dressing the child would probably be left to her. Little Baldy was also obedient. She wore kitten pajamas, and the little ears on her head drooped down. She carried her little white cat, and let Annie Wong lead her to her room. After taking a step or two, she turned around to look at Bai Juan. She was so pitiful that she didn't like him. That look made Bai Juan wish that he could become a woman so that he could hug the child and sleep together. A Jew was sent to another room. Bai Juan was also worried. He had just sat in a room and done some English questions when he called Annie Wong over. Nine is lying down. He's lying down. The child's eyes are red. He definitely doesn't want to leave young master. Annie Wong, get her some water later. She gets thirsty easily when she's asleep. Yes. Also, go in and check on her at night. Don't let her kick off her blanket. Even after giving his instructions, Bai Juan was still worried. When he thought of the child's small eyes just now, his heart clenched. But no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't think of any good ideas, so he could only do this. Bai Juan did some English questions for a while and realized that he really couldn't concentrate. He put down the pencil in his hand, changed into a jersey, and walked into the bathroom with a towel. After taking a shower, she finally felt a little more comfortable. She walked to the bedside, intending to lift the quilt and lie down. Who would have thought that as soon as she opened the lid, little Baldy's face would be revealed? The child was puffing out his cheeks, secretly competing with each other. Little brother, I've thought about it. I don't want to sleep alone. I promised Grandpa Bai that I would take care of you. You're too lonely by yourself. Even if you don't let me sleep on the bed, I can sleep on the floor with Xiao Bai. Or if you don't want me, you can send me back to the temple. I'm not a poor monk. I'm a monk with ambition. Bai Juan listened to the child's words and reached out to pull little Baldy out. Who said that you were a little poor monk? I'm just saying, little Baldy explained, to emphasize that I don't want to be separated from you. Bai Juan was amused by her serious look. You even know how to use metaphors. Little brother, laugh if you want to. Little Baldy hugged his two short arms and sat there like a roly-poly toy. Anyway, I don't want to sleep in separate rooms. Aren't we family? Shouldn't they be sleeping together as a family? Bai Juan was speechless. He actually couldn't refute this argument. I was very sleepy. As little Baldy spoke, he rubbed his eyes with his two little claws. But Woolly Buddha said that it's not right to sleep in someone else's bed without their permission. So I persisted for a long time, waiting for little brother to finish his homework and take a shower. I just wanted to ask little brother, can I sleep with you? I won't move around at night. I promise I'll be very obedient. Moreover, I'm very soft when you pinch me. If you don't believe me, you can pinch me. Bai Juan saw that the child was so sleepy that he couldn't even open his eyes. Then, he thought about what he had just said. She had been cooped up here since he was doing his homework. Was she afraid that he would ask Annie Wong to take him away? Bai Juan seemed to have thought of something. He lifted the little girl's back. It was already a little red. If he hadn't come out earlier, he would definitely have heat rashes. 2 days ago, he had told himself to take good care of the child. In the end, because of some male-female problem, he had to sleep in separate rooms from the child. He clearly knew that this little child was the most insecure. Bai Juan blamed himself and hugged little Jew. Is your back itchy? It's not itchy. I'm sleepy, little Baldy said vaguely. Bai Juan leaned over and blew 2 mouthfuls of cold air on him. Little Baldy only felt comfortable. As expected, little brother treated him the best. Go to sleep. Bai Juan gently patted the little girl in his arms and lay on the bed himself. He had been thinking too much. Little Jew was only 4 years old. Even if she was a girl, she was still a little girl. They didn't have to sleep in separate rooms now. It wouldn't be too late to separate after she knew that she was a girl. As Bai Juan thought about this, he gradually closed his eyes with someone in his arms. He was finally at ease. The next morning, Annie Wong came up to clean up. She saw the 2 children sleeping in each other's arms through the half-open door. Little Jew was already younger than her peers. Being held in by Juan's arms, she looked even more simple and honest. Annie Wong shook her head and smiled. She closed the door for the 2 children. In less than half an hour, little Baldy woke up. The sky had just brightened. Little Baldy took off his kitten pajamas and stretched out his little arms to put on the sportswear that Bai Juan had just bought for him yesterday. Life in the temple was very regular. Little Baldy's schedule had already been formed. He had to exercise in the morning to train his mind. This time, he didn't wake Bai Juan up. He got up from the bed, jumped off the ground, and changed into his little sneakers, intending to go out. Finally, he thought about it again. Yesterday, he promised to buy breakfast for Annie Wong, but he didn't do it. Today, he had to fulfill his promise. Little Baldy turned around and ran to the kitchen. Annie Wong was cooking cold dishes and boiling mung bean soup inside. "Ajoo, why are you up so early?" "I'm going to do my morning exercise and buy breakfast back." "What does Annie Wong want to eat?" "Annie Wong can go by my baby." "You should sleep more." "No need. Annie Wong is cooking at home. I'll go out and buy it." Buddha Woolley said that this is called a perfect division of labor. The place to buy fried dough sticks and buns is in the cafeteria of the courtyard. It's just a turn to the left. Don't go by yourself. Get an adjutant to follow you. Although the courtyard was safe, Annie Wong was still worried. She was afraid that the child would get lost. Little Baldy said seriously, "The uncles can't outrun me. I'm afraid that I'll tire them out." "You brat, how could they not outrun you?" Before Annie Wong could finish her sentence, she saw little Baldy rush out like a small firestorm wheel. This. Chapter 1133. The facilities in the courtyard were good to begin with. There were tall locust trees everywhere, and when the breeze swayed, indescribable small white petals would appear. Many chiefs liked to practice military boxing below, and there were also people who ran around it. All of them were wearing camouflage uniforms. When little Baldy saw that someone was running with her, she became more energetic and began to speed up. That day, little Gangster Lee was also dragged to the training garden by his father. As soon as he arrived, he saw a small figure that was like a flaming while killing a group of soldiers in seconds. He rubbed his sleepy face and was a little dumbfounded. That was indeed little Ajoo. Little Gangster Lee's father was also a little stunned. After looking at her, he looked at his son and felt even more annoyed. "Look at her. Even a little kid runs faster than you." Little Gangster Lee was very careless. "She is the sister that Bai Juan brought back from the mountain. Of course she runs fast. You both live together. How can you be so different from Bai family's child?" At this point, little Gangster Lee's father wanted to kick his son's butt again. Little Gangster Lee snorted. "That's up to you. This is completely a genetic problem." "A genetic problem? I'll let you see what a genetic explosion is today." After a few laps, little Baldy was about to go buy breakfast when she saw little Gangster Lee being chased by his father all over the courtyard. In the end, that person grabbed her arm and panted, "Little Ajoo, you have to save your brother. My father is chasing me and doesn't even care about his high blood pressure. Don't you think this is like father and son killing each other? You must have made Uncle angry again," little Baldy said righteously. "Otherwise, how could he be beaten? Little brother never gets beaten." Little Gangster Lee was speechless. Fuck. Master Bai had never been a normal person since he was young. How could they compare? At this time, little Gangster Lee's father also caught up. By the way, little Gangster Lee's father had a wild appearance since he was young. He was tall like a bear. In addition, he had been in the army all year round. When some children saw him, their first reaction was fear. Therefore, when facing little Baldy, he deliberately softened his tone. "Little Ajoo, right? Yesterday, you went out to play with Brother Lee. Did you have fun?" Little Baldy answered seriously. "Brother Lee treated us to fried with him." "Fried potatoes?" Lee Bawang's father was confused. Little Gangster Lee explained to his father, "It's French fries. Little Ajoo loves to eat French fries. She only eats vegetarian food and doesn't eat meat." "Uncle, I'm going to buy breakfast for little brother. Can you ask Brother Lee to take me?" Little Baldy counted with his fingers. "The money I brought is neither too much nor too little. I can treat Uncle Lee to a cup of soy milk and a youtiao. The youtiao in the canteen is very delicious. I even ate it yesterday." Lee Bawang's father had never been invited to breakfast by such a young child. After hearing this, he was very happy. He patted his son on the back with his thick palm and said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take Ajoo to buy food." Cough, 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 cough. Little Gangster Lee was about to be slapped to death. "Dad, I know you like children, but can you show some mercy? I'm your biological son." Little Gangster Lee's father raised his son crudely. In addition, little Gangster Lee's achievements made people want to throw him back into their stomachs. He gave a very serious order. "Brat, go quickly." "Yes." Little Gangster Lee saluted his father. Before leaving, Little Gangster Lee's father pulled him back and stuffed 100 yuan into his hands. He couldn't really let a Jew buy breakfast. The child was only a few years old. Little Gangster Lee patted his chest and said, "Dad, don't worry. I promised to spend all of it." He wanted to beat his son again. What should he do? At first, Little Gangster Lee thought that Little Baldy had money from anyone, until Little Baldy took out a small package from his pocket and took out a 50 yuan note from it. Only then did Little Gangster Lee react. "What's this money?" "I brought it down from the temple." Little Baldy looked at the canteen and replied, "Master said that every year my mother would donate a lot of incense money to the temple. Master asked me to bring some of it down the mountain." Little Gangster Lee said, "A part of it, the big package you're carrying? Oh, it's full of money." Little Baldy used the back of his little hand to wipe the sweat on his forehead. "Shouldn't you bring more money when you go out?" Little Gangster Lee scratched the wall. He had never thought that Little Baldy would be a rich woman. "Besides, I have to support you in the future." Little Baldy lowered his head and fiddled with his small package. "This little money is not enough. While I become an abbot, I can earn a lot of incense money." Little Gangster Lee was stunned. "You become an abbot to earn money? Monks also need to eat. If I don't earn money, how can I eat? How can I believe in Woolly Buddha?" Little Baldy said matter-of-factly. Little Gangster Lee felt that his worldview had been overturned. Fortunately, the child had a conscience and bought him a cup of mung bean soup. He let him drink it and calm down. Although he had already seen Little Baldy's appetite, Little Gangster Lee still couldn't react to buying 6 vegetable buns and half a bag of fried dough sticks. "You and Bai Juan can't eat so much, right? These are all for myself. I've been exercising for a long time today, so I need to replenish my nutrition. Otherwise, I won't grow tall." Little Baldy said very seriously, "Little brother doesn't like to eat fried dough sticks. He likes to eat eggs. I'm going to buy him 10 tea eggs later." Little Gangster Lee was speechless. "Trust me, child. If you buy so many tea eggs back, your little brother will choke to death. No one can eat as much as you." Little Baldy didn't care about Little Gangster Lee's pitiful Lin Dayu's gaze. She was busy buying everyone their favorite food. Although Little Baldy looked very stupid, he still knew the basic principles. If someone bought something for him, he had to return the favor. Even if the little brother liked to support him, he couldn't always eat and drink for free in the Bai family. He had to do a lot of things. Little Baldy's thoughts were so straightforward. Li Hailu followed her from one place to the next. He was already exhausted. Little Baldy, on the other hand, was full of energy as he carried a lot of things. When he saw that Little Gangster Lee couldn't walk anymore, he even emptied a chubby little hand and directly dragged him away. Yes, she thought of the days when she dragged her martial nephews on the mountain. It was very happy. Little Gangster Lee, who was being dragged, struggled to get up. "Little Jew, I can walk on my own. I can walk on my own. Believe me." It was embarrassing enough to let a child who was so much younger than him carry breakfast. If he was dragged back by Little Jew, his father would definitely kick him to death when he saw him. The two children were talking happily, but at this moment, a mocking voice sounded from behind them. Chapter 1134. I was wondering why I couldn't buy anything so early in the morning. It turns out that someone ate too much. Even the chef in the cafeteria didn't have time to cook anymore. Master Lee turned around and saw the prettiest girl's mother standing with a few aunties in the courtyard with a disdainful smile on her face. Master Lee frowned subconsciously but didn't say anything. Lin Ziwen's mother spoke again. "Xiao Lu, why are you with such a person? She's a child of the Bai family." Master Lee thought that she didn't know Aju's identity. Mrs. Lin sneered. "How can an outsider from the countryside become a child of the Bai family? Xiao Lu, you're young, and your mother isn't by your side all year round. Annie Lin will teach you what kind of person you should hang out with. Hanging out with such an outsider will lower your status. We've never seen such a person in our cafeteria. Have you never eaten fried dough sticks in your life? Why are you buying half a bag of them?" At first, when Little Baldy heard what the other party said, she thought that she had bought all the food and caused the other party to not have breakfast. Then, the more she listened, the more she felt that the other party's tone was not very good. Although little Baldy was young, she still had a sense of right and wrong. In addition, there were still many fried dough sticks at Uncle Lin's place. This female benefactor didn't buy them, but instead complained that she bought too much. According to what Buddha said, this was not reasonable at all. However, the other party had no intention of stopping. Xiao Lu, it's obvious that this child has no manners. Which parent would let their child eat so much? Mrs. Lin glanced at little Baldy contemptuously. Unless it's those poor people from the countryside. I spent money to buy the fried dough sticks. It's my business how much I eat. What does it have to do with this female benefactor? Little Baldy was unhappy. She hated it when people said that she had no manners. Although her mother was not by her side, she would teach her a lot of things every time she wrote a letter. Her brothers would also send her a lot of things. She didn't steal or rob, so how could she have no manners? Her mother had told her that the things she bought within reason were hers. No one else had the right to talk nonsense. When Mrs. Lin heard that the little girl dared to talk back to her, she was instantly angry and laughed. Look, this child really has no manners at all. The adults are lecturing them. How can a child interrupt? You're obviously talking about me. Why can't I interrupt? Little Baldy narrowed his eyes and looked at her. I'm a person with a good upbringing. On the contrary, this benefactress, it's not up to you to criticize how much I eat when I buy something. Even if I'm from the countryside, I'm not eating your food. Mrs. Lin snorted. You're indeed not eating my family's food. You're eating the Bai family's food. How can a child be so shameless? Do you think it's natural to stay in the Bai family? I didn't stay in the Bai family. Little Baldy had already been agitated by her little brother wanting to sleep in separate beds with her last night. Now that she was being said like this, the child felt very uncomfortable. She clenched her little hands tightly. She really wanted to beat someone up. However, Master had told him to control his temper after leaving the mountain. When he wanted to beat someone up, he had to recite Ba 3 times in his mind. Even her little brother didn't like her fighting. It didn't stay in the Bai family. All right, kid, I don't have time to talk to you about this. Mrs. Lin was very indifferent. In the future, when you buy so many things in the cafeteria, do you think you're feeding pigs? Even pigs can't eat as much as you. The Andes chuckled softly. Little Baldy had never experienced such things. She had been sent to the mountain since she was young. Her master, senior brothers, and martial nephews all felt very sorry for the child. No one would mock little Baldy like this. The disdain in her words was blatantly hurtful. Little gangster Lee was also a naughty child. In addition, he was loyal to his friends. He turned his body sideways and stood in front of little Baldy. Auntie Lin, you're the one who's shameless to bully a child like this. My father said that a hero doesn't care about his background. It's despicable to bully a child like this. You little rabbit, no wonder your father beats you every day. Mrs. Lin snorted coldly in anger. You're really the kind of person you play with. You'll be a good-for-nothing for the rest of your life. Little Baldy felt that it was useless no matter how much she chanted Ba. She took a step forward with her short legs, and her eyes were as bright as a little wolf's. Mrs. Lin panicked under the gaze of the child in front of her. She raised her hand and pushed away the soy milk in her hand. Little Baldy had a lot of things hanging on her body. With Mrs. Lin's brute force, her small sportswear was spilled all over her body. However, she still did not take a step back. She just looked at Mrs. Lin and said, "Apologize." Mrs. Lin's skirt was stained with soy milk. She was extremely disgusted. You still dare to ask me to apologize? Do you think you're really a member of the Bai family just because you're here? I'll teach you a lesson today and let you know where you are. Where's the adjutant? Get her out of here. When little gangster Lee saw this situation, he was afraid that he could not protect little Jew. They were all adults, and his father was not here. Not everyone dared to provoke the Lin family in the military compound. If Bai Juan found out that his precious sister was bullied under his watch, he would definitely pull off his pants in the future. Little gangster Lee did not even think about it. He directly threw the things on Mrs. Lin, turned around, and ran towards the Bai family. Madame Lin's millet porridge was thrown at her head. She was so angry that her face turned green. This little brat. I'm going crazy. I'm really going crazy. When little Baldy saw that little gangster Lee had started to throw things, she thought that the battle had started. However, she did not like to waste food. First, she lowered her head and put down the tea egg that little brother liked the most. Then, her sharp eyes swept over the two adjutants who came in. The people from the Lin family were always unreasonable, especially the people who followed Mrs. Lin. They stretched out their hands towards little Baldy. Little Baldy's eyes darkened as she pinched the forearm of one of the adjutants. It was different from when she usually sparred with others. This time, she really used all her strength. Mrs. Lin saw that the child still wanted to resist. Is this child going to heaven or something? Throw her away. Let's see who dares to touch her. There was a bang. The door of the cafeteria was kicked fiercely. Bai Juan, who was wearing a coat, walked in from outside. His face no longer had the usual smile of a young master. It was said that Bai Juan was the calmest child in the compound. When he saw the elders, he could not find any mistakes at all. Even his usual actions were according to a template. But today, without saying anything, he went up and gave that adjutant a slap. Is there no one else in the Bai family? Look clearly who she is, and you still dare to make a move? Chapter 1135. Li Hailu was right. Other than Master Bai, there was no one else in the courtyard who had such an aura since they were young. The aide-de-camp was stunned. Normally, he would fight back. Tyrant Li gritted his teeth. He must have used his connections to get in. How dare he return Master Bai's hand? Have you figured out your military rank? Unfortunately, Bai Juan did not compete with him in terms of military rank. He kicked him fiercely. He was like a young warlord who had yet to grow up. A loud bang was heard. The adjutant was kicked onto the dining table. Bai Juan was ruthless. He did not even want his coat. He turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin, but his words were directed at Li Hailu. Hailu, which fucking family does this adjutant belong to? The Lin family. You're definitely asking the obvious. Fight me. Bai Juan chuckled softly. Auntie Lin, you're here too. This adjutant of the Lin family is really well found. He dares to beat up anyone he sees, right? Uncle Zhang, call my grandpa and tell him that if my grandpa gives him the position that Cousin Lin wants, he won't have a grandson like me. This, little gangsterly interrupted and said, that's not necessary, right? Bai Juan ignored him and continued. By the way, tell my grandfather that in the future, I will fucking beat up the Lin family every time I see them. Their entire family will bully me because I don't have a father or mother. This time, Adjutant Zhang was the one who hesitated. Young master, who would dare to bully you like this in the courtyard? The old chief doesn't like it when people mention this. You're obviously trying to infuriate the old chief. Juan, this is all a misunderstanding. How could Annie bully you? Mrs. Lin wanted to explain. I'll change this adjutant later. Don't you think it's not good to alarm the old master over such a small matter? Bai Juan smiled again. Auntie Lin, when you were about to kick him out just now, why didn't you say that this was a small matter? If someone treated Lin Ziwen the same way today, you definitely wouldn't say it was a small matter. Little Juan, you brought back a child from the mountains, and he saw that she was really uneducated and didn't have any control when she ate. So I just wanted to control her. Is this worth getting angry over? Bai Juan's eyes darkened. I call you Annie because of Uncle Lin. Do you really think that you're my Annie? A mistress dares to say that others have no manners? These words were the eternal pain in Madame Lin's heart, but because of the Lin family's power, no one dared to mention it. In fact, Ms. Lin had indeed been promoted later on. The previous wife of the Lin family was the one who was magnanimous. However, she had thought things through and decided not to go abroad with this marriage in mind. When Mrs. Lin heard this, her face turned red and white. Juan, you're almost done. Bai Juan's expression was cold. Uncle Zhang, go and call Grandpa immediately. Yes, Deputy Zhang, you finally understand. If you didn't make this call today, young master would have directly destroyed the canteen. Mrs. Lin hurriedly reached out and pulled Adjutant Zhang. Just because of a little country bumpkin, the relationship between the two families is ruined. Little Juan is a child. How can Adjutant Zhang not understand? Vice Commander Zhang's mouth opened wide. No wonder young master was so angry. This woman really had a bad mouth. When Mrs. Lin saw that she had stabilized Vice Commander Zhang, she turned around and continued to say to Bai Jin, "Little Juan, look at Annie Lin's body. It's all because of this little country bumpkin. Annie Lin didn't say anything to you, right? Let's forget about this matter. Let's not alarm the old man." "Don't alarm my grandfather?" "Sure." Bai Juan walked in front of Vice Commander Zhang and took the pistol hanging on his belt with a snap. He pointed it directly at Mrs. Lin's head. "I'll shoot you, and we'll forget about this matter." His ferocious look gave Vice Commander Zhang a shock. "Young master, go to the side." Bai Juan's eyes were only on Mrs. Lin. "Tell me, I'll shoot you, okay?" Mrs. Lin had never seen such a scene before. Her legs were weak, and her entire body was stiff. She didn't even dare to move. How could a child take out a gun just like that? This was not something a child would do at all. Master Li watched from the side without blinking. He sniffed the snot that was about to come out. He thought to himself, fuck, his brother was really cool. Since I can't forget about this matter, even if I shoot you, why can't you just bully my child? Bai Juan asked Mrs. Lin. No one dared to go up and stop him. Mrs. Lin's voice was trembling. "Little Juan, didn't Annie already admit her mistake? Put the gun back. Be careful not to misfire. This is Andy's fault this time." Bai Juan sneered and returned the gun to Vice Commander Zhang. "Go and make the call now. Don't let me really shoot." Vice Commander Zhang felt that he should indeed make the call. Young master was really angry this time. How could he not be angry? Bai Juan had never thought that he would see such a miserable little baldy. When he woke up, Annie Wang even said that a Jew had gone out to buy breakfast for him. The child was reluctant to wake him up and did not bring any money with her. Bai Juan was already worried. Before he could put on his clothes, he heard little Tyrant panting and telling him how a Jew was bullied. As soon as he arrived at the canteen, he saw that his child was covered in residue. The small sportswear she wore when she went out was dirty, and she was even dragged away. However, young Master Bai could no longer remember that little Baldy actually knew martial arts. He just felt that his child had to be pointed at and scolded when she came out to buy breakfast. It was also because she had lived in the Bai family for 2 days. What the fuck was this world? Bai Juan's eyes were red with anger. He walked toward little Baldy and wiped the child's face with a tissue. "Little brother, I didn't hit anyone." This was the first sentence the child said when she saw him. The second sentence was, "I bought you 10 of your favorite tea eggs and put them on the table. I thought that if you didn't come, I would spar with them." Actually, it was just a change of adjectives. The meaning of the little guy's attempt to cover up was particularly obvious. Bai Juan found it funny and distressing when he heard this. "If you want to spar in the future, spar. Don't worry so much." Little Baldy tilted her big head cutely. Little brother had clearly told her not to always beat people up. Why did he change his mind now? Bai Juan looked at the redness on the back of the child's hand and knew that it was burned by something. His heart was burning. He asked Li Hailu, who was beside him, "What's going on?" Auntie Lin spread it with a wave of her hand. Li Hailu glanced at Mrs. Lin, who was already scared out of her wits. This woman is really the most disgusting woman I've ever seen. She was clearly the one who did it. She just said that a Jew did it. How shameless. Chapter 1136. Li Hailu's voice was loud to begin with, but after he shouted like this, the people who came to buy food all knew what was going on. They turned around and looked at Bai Juan, who was protecting little Baldy. No wonder the kid from the Bai family was so angry. Mrs. Lin had really gone too far this time. Bullying a child was at the very least a personality problem. Xiaofeng followed his mother to buy breakfast. When he saw that his brothers were all there, and when he heard Li Hailu shout, he gave up his usual image as a noble young master. He ran over and asked Bai Juan, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Bai Juan looked at Mrs. Lin. "It's the Lin family who are in trouble." Xiaofeng had been with Bai Juan since he was young. In a military compound, the reason why people did not dare to provoke these two families was because they were very close. "Mom," compared to Li Hailu, Xiaofeng's voice was not that loud, but it made Mrs. Lin even more afraid. Someone is bullying Bai Juan. Come and take a look. Mrs. Xiao walked over. She was wearing a pure white business suit. She didn't look like someone who had given birth to a child at all. Her temperament was particularly good. She worked in education and came from a scholarly family. From the beginning, she didn't like Mrs. Lin. If it weren't for the old chief, she wouldn't even greet Mrs. Lin when she saw her. Now that she heard her son say that Bai Juan had been bullied, when her eyes swept over Mrs. Lin, they became more and more emotionless. What's going on? Mrs. Lin wanted to explain, but she was stopped by Mrs. Zhao's words. I'm asking Xiao Juan, not you. Auntie Xiao, I'll settle this matter. Bai Juan didn't even say anything because he felt that there was no need to say anything about what had happened. When Mrs. Xiao heard this, she knew that even she couldn't interfere. This child. Hailu, go and tell Master Li to fry as many fried dough sticks as he can. Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. Our child can eat so much. I can buy as much for her as she eats. We're just buying things. Do we have to be discriminated against just because we buy more? How can the food be scattered by someone? As he spoke, Bai Juan looked in Mrs. Lin's direction. You better not go out these few days. I can't guarantee that I won't splash you with hot soy milk when you go out. Or you will think that I treat an elder like this, right? That's even easier. Hailu, Xiao Feng, in the future, no matter whether the Lin family is male or female, including Lin Ziwen, beat them up every time you see them. Bai Juan, Mrs. Lin couldn't find a way out of this embarrassing situation, but what she was most worried about was what would happen next. Annie made a mistake. You should come at Andy. Why did you let them hit Wenwen? Bai Juan looked at her expressionlessly. Because I'm a child with no upbringing. I will do whatever I like. If you can bully my child, why can't I make an example of your child? Your child is a treasure, but mine isn't. You're just bullying our Lin clan because we're not as powerful as your Bai clan, right? Mrs. Lin was also confused with anger. Her mouth was trembling. Why don't you see how much our Lin family has helped your Bai family get to where they are today? When Bai Juan heard this, he smiled. So it's all because of the Lin family's help that our Bai family has today. You should say this to my grandfather. It's best if you call Grandpa Lin and Uncle Lin over and ask them why your Lin family helped our Bai family. You're really used to being left alone. I don't want to talk to you. Mrs. Lin turned her face away, thinking that since Old Chief Bai had already been alerted, she could just fight to the end. Their Lin family had taken a bullet for the Bai family. Xiao Lin's mother, who was at the side, originally wanted to persuade Bai Juan not to show off so much at such a young age. Now that she heard Mrs. Lin's words, she could not help but shake her head. The Lin family had really courted death by marrying such a daughter-in-law into the family. The other two daughters-in-law, who were often with Mrs. Lin and had just entered the family, did not know the twists and turns of this matter. They only felt that Bai Juan was unreasonable. That's enough. Sister Lin just said one more sentence. Shouldn't the elders teach the younger generation to listen? Chief Lin has taken a bullet for others before, right? Isn't that so? Now, someone's trying to be ungrateful. Not to mention Xiao Lin's mother. Even little Gangster Li felt that these women were a little retarded. No wonder his father had taught him since he was young that he had to marry a virtuous wife and not just for looks. Little Gangster Li had been conflicted in the past. He liked good-looking girls so much, but his father had denied his only criteria for choosing a girlfriend. Wasn't this forcing him to turn gay? He now understood that in the future, he really had to look at not just the face, but also the brain. Otherwise, he would not even know when he would die. Bai Juan was even more direct. He first carried little Baldy up, then said to Vice Commander Zhang, remember all their names. Hey, you really scared us to death. Isn't he just a child? Can he really be the head of the Bai family? Even if old Chief Bai comes, he has to care about his face. This child really needs to be disciplined. He's getting more and more lawless. Xiao Lin listened to this series of attacks and raised his head again. He looked at the tall and straight figure not far away. Without thinking, he walked over and said to Mother Xiao, Mom, tell Dad and Grandpa that if Bai Juan wants to fight, I'll fight with him. I'll fight with him too. Little Gangster Li also ran over. There was a layer of sweat on his forehead. Those who don't like Bai Juan are going against the Li family. Bai Juan stood in the middle of the two people. He was like a pine tree with delicate features. He was even holding the soft little Baldy in his hand. Mother Xiao looked at this scene and seemed to see the future of the military compound. These children seemed to be even more united than the previous generation. Outsiders always said that the reason why the Chinese were sometimes cowardly was because before others could attack, their own family had already destroyed their own people. But now, Mrs. Xiao felt a kind of pure brotherly spirit from these juniors. Although they still looked a little immature and arrogant. But it was better than their brothers being submissive when they were in trouble. Children raised by soldiers should be so brave. The two who spoke did not think much of it. Mrs. Lin still knew some things. When she heard that the Bai, Li, and Xiao families were going to join forces, her face turned pale in an instant. No matter how she thought about it, she could not understand. She just wanted to teach a little Baldy a lesson. How did it end up like this? After Mrs. Lin returned home, she was nervous for a long time. Seeing that there was nothing strange at home, she smiled again. She knew it. It was just a few children. What kind of trouble could they cause? Unfortunately, she had underestimated Master Bai's planning ability. Chapter 1137. You won't be of any use if you go home like this. Bai Juan hugged little Baldy and applied medicine to the child. His eyes revealed a depth that did not match his age. Shaolin was smart to begin with. You mean we need to use some tricks? Yes. Bai Juan's voice was very calm. I'll take care of the Lin family. Hailu, go home first and bring some steam buns that Annie Wong made. Don't go out even if Uncle Li knocks on the door. Insist on not eating in the afternoon. Just say that you have no appetite because you were angered by the Zhang family. Then tell Uncle Li that the Zhang family has been in contact with the Sun family in the south recently and wants to abolish some veteran subsidies. Fuck, how do you know such a thing? Master Li was simply impressed. He could only hear these words from his father and the others. How did Master Bai know? However, his father hated it when people were harsh on veterans. Bai Juan lowered his eyes and blew on little Baldy's hand. Seeing the child shrink back, his hand also tightened. This matter won't be over just like that. Shaolin understood Bai Juan's meaning and did not continue to speak. He brought Master Li out of the door. Since noon that day, the Xiao and Li families have been anxious, especially the two grandmas. What's going on? Why isn't he eating anything? Master Li's grandmother once had a military rank on her shoulder. Usually, her grandson ate as if he was fighting a war. Why was he so listless today? Grandma Li's first reaction was to ask Master Li's father, "Tell me, did you hit Hailu again? How would I dare to hit your precious grandson?" Master Li's father was also puzzled. What's going on with this kid today? What is he doing? Grandma Li slapped the back of her son's head. How can you talk about your son like that? Why don't you go up and ask? Master Li's father thought that he had to ask. If he did not ask clearly, the Li family would not be able to have peace. When there was a knock on the door, Master Li was eating meat buns in the sea. When he heard his father's voice, he choked so much that he drank 3 mouthfuls of mineral water before he patted his chest with all his might. Phew, I almost choked to death. While muttering, Li Hailu quickly packed the rest of the buns in a plastic bag and stuffed them into the drawer. He even fanned himself with a fan. After the smell was gone, he opened the door from the inside. As soon as Li Baowang's father came in, he saw his son leaning against the wall and imitating Lin Daiyu. It seemed that there was something wrong with his son. You don't have a fever? Li Hailu's father looked Li Hailu up and down. Why is your face so red? That was because he choked on water. Afraid that he would be discovered, Li Hailu immediately changed the topic. First, he talked about what had happened this morning from beginning to end. Then, he talked about the harsh veteran. Li Hailu's father immediately slammed the table and stood up. Come, follow me back to the army. Master Li knew that Bai Juan's method was effective, so he finally didn't have to pretend anymore. He went downstairs and began to wolf down the food. Grandma Li was a sensible person. She knocked on the table and asked him, "You tell Grandma the truth. Did that brat from the Bai family tell you to do this today?" Yes. When Grandma Li saw that her grandson admitted it so readily, she was stunned at first. Then, she heard Li Hailu say, "When I came, Bai Juan said that if Grandma asks, I should tell the truth." He said that you feel sorry for the children. This little fox. Grandma Lee smiled. Aren't you afraid that you will be betrayed when the time comes? When Li Hailu said this, he had to talk to Grandma properly. Grandma, first of all, I don't think Bai Zhuan did anything wrong. He can't be compared to me. I have a father and a mother. You and Grandpa often accompany me. He only has Grandpa Bai left. Grandpa Bai still stays in the army all year round and doesn't come back. Now that he finally has a younger sister who helped him go out to buy breakfast, she was pointed at the nose and called a country bumpkin. Who could tolerate this? I can't control the situation like Bai Zhuan, but what I admire the most is his ability to protect his own people. Also, although Bai Zhuan is a little fox, he won't betray me. Grandma, do you still remember that one winter when we went to play, the river froze? I was playful and fell into the ice hole. If Bai Zhuan hadn't grabbed me and didn't let go, I would have lost my life. At that time, everyone else had run away, leaving only him and Shaolin. We were young at that time, not even 4 years old. Shaolin was scared silly at that time. He kept pointing at me and crying. Only Bai Zhuan didn't let go even when the ice was about to crack. Grandma, you also know that I don't have many things in my heart. I think this is quite good. Let Bai Zhuan worry about those things. I will fight wherever he tells me to fight. With him standing behind me and commanding me, I am relieved. He is also good to our Li family. He never thinks that we are barbaric, unlike some people who show that they respect our military achievements, but in fact, they always laugh at my wild personality. Bai Zhuan said that it would be good if a person like me entered the army. I will also be a general in the future. Me, Shaolin, and Bai Zhuan, the three of us will always be the Iron Triangle. This sentence is never said casually. After little Gangster Li finished speaking, he began to eat the white rice in his bowl in big mouthfuls. Grandma Li, on the other hand, was unable to come back to her senses for a long time because of these words. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't this what they wanted? After 100 years, her grandson would be able to protect the country, and someone would be able to protect her grandson. They were also relieved that these 3 children could be so well. Although the situation on Shaolin's side was different, the result was the same. The 2 women who said that Bai Zhuan didn't know what was going on, but their husbands were already being interviewed. In the afternoon, Old Master Bai rushed back from outside the city. His expression was very bad. Bai Zhuan, who allowed you to pull out your gun? Kneel down first. Bai Zhuan was still holding little Baldy in his hand. He raised his eyes to look at Old Master Bai. Grandfather, go and call the Lin family over first. I'll kneel again. You're going to anger me to death. Old Master Bai put on his military cap. Little Baldy was originally asleep, but she instantly opened her eyes. Knowing that the situation was not right, she immediately rolled down from the sofa. Grandfather Bai, I'll kneel for little brother. When Old Master Bai saw the child, the anger in his heart subsided. Why are you kneeling? Let your brother kneel. Little brother pulled out his gun for me. Little Baldy's little palm was scalded. When she fell asleep, Bai Zhuan had just wrapped a white bandage around her. Now, she was like a little panda. I shouldn't have stayed in the Bai family for free. This way, others won't say anything about me, and little brother won't get angry. If little brother doesn't get angry, Grandpa Bai won't get angry. A Jew has already decided. When little brother falls asleep in a while, I will go and find those people to settle the score. I will directly beat them up. In the future, I will settle my own matters on my own and not implicate little brother. I just don't know why, but in the end, the person who was coaxed became me. Speaking of this, little Baldy frowned in distress and said seriously, in the future, I must get rid of the habit of taking an afternoon nap. It's too much of a delay in business. Vice Commander Zhang, your so-called business is to coax the young master and then beat people up? Chapter 1138. When Old Master Bai heard little Baldy's words, he immediately frowned. A Jew, tell Grandpa, who said that our little Jew was a freeloader, an ant. Little Baldy used her little claws to tug at the corner of Old Master Bai's clothes. She even said that I was a little brother. At that time, I really wanted to beat her up. In the past, senior brother always said that the women at the foot of the mountain were tigers. Only now do I know what tiger looks like. I don't think I'm wrong, but Grandpa said that if you want us to kneel, we will kneel. Woolly Buddha said that this is called filial piety. Old Master was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and reached out to touch little Baldy's big head. Our little Jew is more sensible than some adults. As he said that, Old Master looked at Baijuan. You are older than a Jew. As an older brother, there is nothing wrong with you protecting her. But Baijuan, remember, don't let anyone in the family see you pull out the gun. The gun in your hand is to protect your family. Even if one day you want to use it, you have to do it where she can't see you. Understand? Yes, Grandpa, Baijuan said as he bent his legs. This time, I was too impulsive. I will handle it better in the future. A Jew is still young. Baijuan brought her back. I can promise Grandpa that I will follow Grandpa's instructions in the future, but I will definitely take revenge for a Jew's grievances. Old Master walked over, his military uniform straight. Of course we have to take revenge. It's wrong for us to pull out the gun, but I won't do it if someone says that about my grandson. Chief. Annie Wong saw that the atmosphere was better, so she dared to speak. She whispered in Old Master Bai's ear, "Little Jew is a girl." Old Master Bai was stunned. What did you say? Little Jew is a girl. Annie Wong repeated. Old Master Bai immediately turned his head to look at little Baldy, who was kneeling with Baijuan. The child was still looking at him with her big round eyes. Even her head tilted to the left, as if she was saying, "What's wrong?" She thinks she is a boy. Auntie Wong continued to whisper to Old Master Bai. After taking a deep breath, Old Master Bai immediately picked up the child. Little Jew, be good. Let your brother kneel. He has rough skin and thick flesh. It's fine for him to kneel for a while. My skin is rough and my flesh is thick too. In order to show off his figure, little Baldy even lifted up his small arms. They were round and cute. The Bai family had only one heir for generations, and most of them were sons. When Baijuan's parents were still alive, Old Master Bai wanted them to quickly give birth to a caring little granddaughter, but the world was unpredictable. Now that his granddaughter had finally come, she was so obedient. The main reason was that she was more sincere than anyone else. How could Old Master Bai not like it? He couldn't wait to get the Lin family to come over and ask them face to face what was going on. Vice Commander Zhang, get everyone over here. Yes. When she received the news, Mrs. Lin was still playing cards in her room. That little bit of uneasiness in the morning had long disappeared for her. It was impossible for the Bai family to break off their relationship with the Lin family for a child from the countryside. Deputy Zhang did not invite Mrs. Lin first, but Mrs. Lin's husband, Lin Feng, who had once worked under Old Master Bai. Lin Feng had just returned from the army, so he did not know what had happened. When he entered the Bai family, he saw Baijuan kneeling on the ground. He was immediately shocked. What's going on? One had to know that Old Master Bai doted on little Juan the most. Not to mention kneeling, he had never even beaten or scolded him. In addition, when people saw Baijuan in all aspects, they would give him a thumbs up. Why did he suddenly make him kneel in the hall? Old Master Bai did not play any tricks with Lin Feng. Baijuan, tell your Uncle Lin what's going on. Baijuan straightened his back, and his voice was indifferent. The Lin family scolded a Jew for being a country bumpkin from the village. They mocked her for being able to eat and said that she was a pig. They even spilled the soy milk she bought on her body. They even said that it was a Jew who was rude. Uncle Lin, since you're here today, let me ask you a question. Did our Bai family rely on your Lin family to get to where we are today? Your wife said that the Lin family is indebted to the Bai family. If it weren't for the Lin family, there would be no Bai family. If it weren't for Grandpa Lin taking the bullet for my grandfather, our Bai family would have been finished long ago. As soon as Lin Feng heard the first sentence, he subconsciously looked at his old chief. When he finished listening to everything, his heart thumped heavily. Old Master Bai also did not expect things to be like this. The expression on his face also turned cold. Lin Feng, since your wife brought this up, then let's have a good talk. Go, bring Madame Lin here. When Lin Feng heard Old Master Bai use the word invite, he knelt on the ground with a thud. Deputy Zhang was waiting for Old Master Bai's words. In less than 5 minutes, he brought him to the Bai family. Lin Feng tried his best to explain to old Master Bai. After all, if not for the help of the Bai family, just based on the Lin family's background, they would be nothing. Grandpa Lin was old Master Bai's adjutant a long time ago. At that time, the Lin family was so poor that they had nothing. Old Master Bai valued Grandpa Lin's honesty and mentioned him again and again. It was indeed true that Grandpa Lin took the bullet for old Master Bai. However, the adjutant was supposed to take the bullet for the chief. This was his duty. If it weren't for old Master Bai, Grandpa Lin wouldn't have been able to stay in the army, let alone have a meteoric rise in the future. Outsiders didn't know about these things, but the older generation knew about them. However, these old leaders only told their descendants. Therefore, Mrs. Lin didn't know that she had just heard a little bit of news and then made up a version with her own imagination. She thought that the Lin and Bai families were so close because Grandpa Lin had saved Grandpa Bai's life. In fact, it was the complete opposite. For so many years, the Lin family had to rely on the Bai family for everything. Mrs. Lin was also a smart person. When she heard that old Master Bai was looking for her, she began to cry before she even entered the door. The content of her cry was roughly, "The two families have been in a relationship for so many years. Even if Bai Juan is looking for my old master, he shouldn't treat me like this." When Lin Feng heard this from inside, he wished that he could immediately rush to the door and shut this woman's mouth. When Mrs. Lin came in and saw that Lin Feng was also kneeling there, she thought that she was doing him a favor. "Old Chief, how did our Lin family let down your Bai family? I admit that my words today were a little too much, but after all, my old master is still here. You can't just forget about your old friends, right?" After old Master Bai heard these words, he smiled coldly. "I finally know why my grandson pulled out a gun. Lin Feng, you really married a good wife." Chapter 1139. Lin Feng's sweat dripped onto the ground along with old Master Bai's words. Mrs. Lin still wanted to say something. Lin Feng didn't care about kneeling or not. He stood up and slapped her face. "Shut up." Mrs. Lin was stunned by this slap. She reached out to cover her face. Looking at her husband's furious expression, even her lips were trembling. Lin Feng pulled her over and knelt beside old Master Bai. "Old Chief, the entire courtyard knows that the reason why the Lin family is where it is today is all because of the old chief. The Bai family's great kindness to the Lin family. The Lin family will not dare to forget. Young master, you're right. No matter what our Lin family's identity is now, we're still part of the Bai family. My father is the adjutant of the old chief, and this will never change. This time, the Lin family has let the old chief down." Mrs. Lin was not stupid. After hearing Lin Feng's words, she instantly realized that she had reversed the situation. The Bai family had never taken advantage of the Lin family. On the contrary, without the Bai family, there would not be the Lin family today. Mrs. Lin panicked. Half of her face was swollen. She looked at old Master Bai guiltily. The Bai family had always had a kind of upright and plain-spoken righteousness. Now, this kind of righteousness was displayed even more vividly under his rage. Mrs. Lin was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly explained, "Old Chief, this is all a misunderstanding. You said that a Jew is a country bumpkin is also a misunderstanding?" Bai Juan's cold voice interrupted her. His hand was still holding little Baldy's head. "You overthrowing her soy milk is also a misunderstanding? Why are there so many misunderstandings in this world?" The more Lin Feng listened, the more miserable his expression became. Many times before, his father had told him to discipline his wife. However, he only felt that his wife usually treated people well. Although she liked to compare, which family didn't like to compare nowadays? Wasn't this a small problem? But now, he realized that this wife of his not only liked to compare, but she also liked to insult people and trample on people. She didn't even let go of children. The key was that this child was brought back by the Bai family. Why didn't she use her brain to think about it carefully? What was the Bai family status? Since they had already decided to bring the child back, and Bai Juan had personally agreed to it, then would the child not be protected by the Bai family? In order to let everyone in the courtyard know about little Leju's existence, Bai Zhuan brought her to meet all the old chiefs in the military compound on the first day. What was the purpose of this? Was it purely to greet the old senior officers with a smile? This was clearly telling the entire hospital that although little Leju was adopted, she was no different from a member of the Bai family. But his wife had actually made such a big mistake. Lin Feng really didn't know what to do. Mrs. Lin was still not convinced, because in her heart, the little Baldy was just a little bastard from the countryside who didn't know who his parents were. However, she understood the current situation very well. If she did not admit her mistake, the old man would not let her go. Therefore, Mrs. Lin had been speaking anxiously. The content was probably to apologize to Bai Zhuan. Bai Zhuan glanced at her, his gaze indifferent. You should say sorry to a Jew, not to me. Mrs. Lin gritted her teeth and looked at little Baldy. A Jew, it's Annie's fault this time. Look, if you had told Annie earlier that your appetite was so big, there wouldn't be such a misunderstanding now. In fact, it's not a big deal for a child to eat a little more. Moreover, Auntie didn't have any ill intentions toward you at that time. It's just that Andy's method was wrong and her attitude was a little too much, which made you feel uncomfortable. Look at now, because of the two of us, the Bai family and the Lin family have become estranged. This is not good. The old chief is old. Do you want Grandpa Bai to continue to be angry? Little Leju is so kind and a monk. She definitely doesn't want to make things difficult for the adults. She will definitely forgive Annie, right? Little Baldy felt that this sentence sounded awkward no matter how she listened to it. She really didn't want the Bai family to have any bad effects because of her. Therefore, little Baldy said it straightforwardly. I will make things difficult for Grandpa Bai. Buddha Wooly said that you should always be grateful to those who treat you well. Hearing the first half of this sentence, the corners of Mrs. Lin's mouth curled up. In the end, she was just a person who came down from the mountains. She just had a soft personality and didn't dare to cause any trouble. As long as she was criticized like this, she would definitely give in. However, the second half of little Baldy's sentence made Mrs. Lin's entire face turn green. She said, Kesu, I don't want to forgive you. You didn't even apologize to me. Buddha Wooly taught everyone that an apology has to be sincere. You're not sincere, but you're still in the Bai family now. It's not convenient for me to beat you up. When you leave the Bai family's courtyard, I'll make a move. Although my mother said that I have to be gentle with girls, after all, I'm going to be an abbot in the future, so I have to be gentlemanly. But I don't want to be gentle with you. I just want to beat you up. Little Baldy said it too straightforwardly. On the contrary, it made people feel that her entire little face was so cute that it could melt people's hearts. The main thing was that her actions were funny. If Bai Zhuan didn't get up, she would kneel with Bai Zhuan. How could Bai Zhuan bear to let a child kneel? Helpless, the dignified young master Bai would never have thought that he, who was invincible in the military compound, would not be able to pull up a 4-year-old child. Little Leju's arm was held by Bai Zhuan the entire time. The small claws of her other arm were pressed on the ground. She was kneeling on her 2 small knees with the kitten on her head. Her small body leaned forward as she spoke to Mrs. Lin in a serious manner. Every sentence made Madame Lin unable to use any of her tricks. Old Master Bai directly said, Lin Feng, you heard it too. What a Jew said is what I want to say. The Bai family will not accept such an accusatory apology. You guys can go out. From today onwards, if anything happens to the Lin family in the future, don't come looking for me again. Go back and tell your father that I'm grateful to him for taking the bullet for me back then. But this doesn't mean that his daughter-in-law can bully the Bai family as she pleases. As soon as the sentence was said, Lin Feng felt that he had lost his composure. He knew that if he walked out of this door, the Lin family would be finished. It was not just wealth, but also the lifeline of the entire Lin family. Especially his father, who had been upright all his life, only had respect for the old chief. He still did not know about this matter when he was outside. Once he found out, the Lin family would be turned upside down. Even if the Bai family was put aside, the Lin family's ungrateful reputation in the military compound would spread. When that time came, what would the Lin family do? The more Lin Feng thought about it, the more anxious he became. However, Bai Juan did not have the chance to explain to him. He directly asked Vice Commander Zhang to chase them out. Ever since Mrs. Lin married into the Lin family, she had never made such a fool of herself. Everyone in the compound was looking at her. Mrs. Lin was extremely angry. She said to Lin Feng, even if the Bai family is indebted to the Lin family, the current Lin family is not weak. Do they really think that they are the only one? Chapter 1140. What do you know? Lin Feng flung Mrs. Lin away. His anxious look was so obvious. It seemed that he had no choice but to inform the old man this time. Mrs. Lin really did not understand why her husband was so anxious. Even if they relied on the Bai family to start a family, there was no one left in the Bai family now. To put it bluntly, Bai Juan did not even have a father. No matter how powerful old Master Bai was, how could he compare to them, who had descendants? Moreover, these sisters of hers in the courtyard were also madams of various families. Compared to the Bai family, the Lin family was very strong in other aspects. Mrs. Lin did not say it on the surface, but she had plenty of ideas in her heart. She planned to go back and use her madam's diplomatic policy. Mrs. Lin went to the Zhang family first. Before she could speak, the sister she married into the Zhang family started crying. She said that her husband had been called away by the higher-ups. She did not know why. Mrs. Lin smiled faintly. Look at you, why are you crying? Maybe there's a mission. You've just been here for a short time and haven't experienced anything. Mrs. Zhang was coaxed by her and laughed. Seeing this, Mrs. Lin felt even more confident. These people were close to her to begin with. With these relationships, Old Master Bai had to weigh the pros and cons. In addition, Old Master Lin would definitely appear in this matter. What else did she have to worry about? She just had to wait for the news. She knew that no matter how protective the Bai family was, they would not really do anything to her for a country bumpkin from the mountains. The more Mrs. Lin thought about it, the more relieved she became. She even found a few sisters in the military courtyard to play cards with her, as if nothing had happened. After all, this was also a method of diplomacy. Come, let's play another round. Someone also advised her. This isn't very good. I heard that the Bai family is quite angry. No matter how angry they are, Old Master Bai has already scolded me. It's almost over. Do you think he will really fall out with the Lin family for a little bastard child? That's not necessarily the case, so what's there to worry about? Come, cast the dice. Let's play cards first. When any of you are hungry, let Aunt Zhang make some soup for you. Before Mrs. Lin could finish the word round, there was a clang. The Lin family's door was pushed open by someone. The madams who were playing mahjong were startled by the noise. They all stood up and looked toward the outer hall. Madam Lin comforted her. It's fine. It must be that one of my family is back. She's still angry with me about the Bai family. Were you scolded by the old man? That's probably the case. One of my family members is very honest. The Bai family has scolded our Lin family so much, but he didn't say a single word. Madam Lin pressed her hand on the mahjong table and sighed. It's not good to be too sentimental. If you ask someone to help you once, you will have to be a servant for the rest of your life. Our Lin family is clearly not weak now, but we still have to be like a grandson and be scolded by Old Master Bai. This time, I think my old master will not let him off easily. Then you should go and take a look. As they spoke, they were about to leave. In the light, a motorcycle was parked right in front of the Lin family's gate. It was a limited edition BMW Tomahawk. The body was very large, beautiful, and stylish. The lines were so smooth that they were shining. The car was propped up by a figure using her long legs. Behind her sat a 9-year-old boy. The boy was wearing a well-ironed suit. He looked noble and handsome, but the way he looked at Mrs. Lin was a little heavy. At first, Madam Lin only saw such a motorcycle. She pulled the soldier beside her over and said, "What are you doing?" Who can break in here just because they want to?" The soldier didn't say anything. His face was pale as he looked in that direction. Madam Lin followed his gaze and saw the 4 sports cars behind the motorcycle. Each of them had an aura that was difficult to ignore. The front lights were turned on, and they were all armed equipment. How did they break in here? Where were the guards? Where were the guards in the courtyard? Madame Lin was furious. Go and call them immediately. Tell them that someone has broken in. Tell them to send as many people as they can. Yes, the soldier received the order and was about to run out. However, before he could run 2 meters, he was stopped by a man who looked like a bear. That man was very tall, about 9 meters tall. He was bald and had long legs. His hands were very strong. With just a pull, he pressed him onto the hood of the car. Then, another handsome youth opened the car door beside him. Lin Feng was actually brought out by someone from inside. When Madame Lin saw her husband in the other party's hands, her eyes trembled. What was going on? What was going on? With a bang, the front of the tomahawk was turned. The figure on top of it took a step forward and slowly walked towards Madame Lin. The mottled light faded away, gradually revealing a clear face. Who else could it be but Hellion Vivian? Hellion Qingchun, who had already grown up, followed behind her, holding an assault rifle in his hand. If he didn't move, his entire body would be surrounded by an elegant aura. I heard that you dislike my sister very much. The boy spoke. There was an indescribable coldness in his voice. Madame Lin was sure that she had never seen this woman and boy before. So how could she dislike their sister? Did you recognize the wrong person? After all, Lin Feng was in the other party's hands, so Madame Lin's attitude was naturally very soft. Hellion Vivian looked at the flattery on her face and smiled. My mother's surname is Bailey, and her name is Gio. Oh, perhaps you still don't know enough. My mother grew up in the mountains and is a monk. She's a little bald. She's very strong and eats a lot. Her Buddhist name is Xianaju. There was a loud boom. Madame Lin felt all the blood in her body rush to the top of her head. A monk, a little bald head, very strong, eats a lot. There was no need to confirm. It was indeed that little country bumpkin. How could this be? How could she, before Madame Lin could figure it out, Hellion Vivian was about to speak. This time, she didn't smile, and her eyes emitted a coldness that was difficult to ignore. Since you think that Maya Ju is a bastard child without parents, then I'll let you see how I will deal with the person who bullies my daughter, Qingchen. Madame Lin accepted a bribe of 10,000 yuan. The money is a little. After all, she's just a military family member and doesn't have a clear military rank. Hellion Qingchun held the notebook in her hand. However, it doesn't matter. Our family has a professional team of lawyers. We will work hard to drag the entire Lin family down. Who asked Maya Ju to be a bastard child? When Madame Lin heard this last sentence, she couldn't hold on any longer. Her vision darkened, and she almost fainted. The only thought in her mind was, this time she was really done for. Chapter 1141. 10,000 yuan was simply a drop in the bucket for the Lin family. But now that Lin Feng was being transferred, if such a thing was exposed, it was very likely that he would be punished. If that was the case, she would not have a good ending. But then again, the matter of 10,000 yuan could be considered a big deal, but it could also be considered a small matter. The Lin family had a foundation for so many years, and people from various departments knew each other. Those people would always give face to the old man. Even if they did not give face to the old man, they still had to be wary of the Tang family. Old Chief Bai said that he was going to fall out with them, but at most, it would only be directed at her personally and would not involve the Lin family. Because something happened to the Lin family, the Bai family would definitely not feel good. The Bai family and the Tang family were cousins. With such a close relationship, the other party could not do anything to her. The more Mrs. Lin thought about it, the calmer she became. She raised her eyes to look at Hellion Vivian. I don't know what you're talking about. I only know one thing. This is the military compound. If you barge in without any procedures, you'll have to bear legal responsibility. Who said I didn't have any procedures? Hellion Wei Wei chuckled as she tilted her head and fiddled with the gun in her hand. Then, she lifted her chin and pointed at Lin Feng. Tell this madam of yours, who tramples on the weak, whether it is legal for me to enter the military compound. Yes. Lin Feng's forehead was covered in sweat, and his tone was not as imposing as before. From the moment he saw the medal on Hellion Vivian's shoulder, he knew that they had kicked an iron plate this time. The Tang sect's 18 shadows. Each of them had made military contributions. While they protected the country, they also had many privileges. One of them included that as long as they showed the medal, they could enter and leave the compound. Moreover, the other party's identity was not that simple. Other than the Tang sect's shadow, she was also the internationally renowned arms queen, Helene Vivian. Even if these were not mentioned, the power of the financial group behind her was not to be underestimated. The Juwei Group was a company that even they did not want to provoke. This person was actually a Jew's mother. Why had he never heard Chief Bai mention it before? It seemed that even Bai Juan did not know about this matter. Lin Feng's entire being was in chaos. He was really scared. How could he marry such a reckless woman? When Mrs. Lin saw that Lin Feng's situation was different, she couldn't help but lose some of her arrogance. However, she wouldn't change her attitude. Even if it's legal, I can still sue you for breaking into my Lin family's house with a bicycle. Sue me? Helene Vivian laughed. He turned around with a bang. The black muzzle was aimed at Mrs. Lin. Before Mrs. Lin could react, there was a loud bang. The bullet pierced through her forearm. Blood gushed out in an instant. Ah! A few madams around them screamed out loud. The other 4 adjutants wanted to come forward, but they were all pushed back by young El's arm. Madame Lin was in so much pain that she immediately collapsed to the ground. Cold sweat and tears poured out together. Helene Vivian walked towards her. If you want to sue me, you have to have a reason. It's just that trespassing into the Lin family is too small a matter. I'll give you this reason now. Let's see if your Lin family will sue me. Bai Juan didn't shoot because he left a way out for the Lin family and the Bai family in his heart. With me, the Lin family has no way out. Old Master Lin's lifelong loyalty has been ruined by a gold digger like you. It's really unpleasant to see. Adjutant Lin, it's time for you to change your taste in women. You. Mrs. Lin was angry and in pain. She wanted nothing more than to pounce on Helene Vivian and bite her to death, but she was afraid of the gun in her hand. This matter will definitely not end just like that. I will sue you. I will definitely sue you. Helene Vivian looked at her with a smile. She squatted down and gently patted her face with the handle of the gun. I fired this shot on behalf of my daughter. You are welcome to sue me at any time. As she spoke, Helene Wei stood up with her long and slender legs and set her gaze on Lin Feng again. I'll get someone to keep an eye on the Lin family. If this woman is still around after 3 days, I won't care about the old master's face anymore. You know very well what the consequences will be. Lin Feng lowered his head. Yes. All right, we still need Adjutant Lin to send us out. As she spoke, Helene Vivian turned around and looked at Mrs. Lin, who was in so much pain. After all, the courtyard is not a place where commoners like us can casually barge into. Mrs. Lin screamed desperately as she was carried onto the bed. She just couldn't swallow this anger. The entire Lin family was emitting an unsettling smell of blood. The few ladies who were playing cards were also frightened by this matter. Lin Feng didn't have the time to care about the things behind him. He followed beside Helene Vivian. Helene Qingchun, who was already 9 years old, didn't want to leave at all. Like a little prince, he stood at a place not far from the Bai family. He stopped in his tracks, his jet-black eyes only looking in one direction. Helene Vivian knew what her son was thinking. She also wanted to see her daughter. However, now was not the right time. Don't tell the Bai family about our identities for the time being, and don't tell anyone. Helene Vivian said to Lin Feng in a low voice, I won't make things difficult for the Lin family. However, Adjutant Lin, you know better than anyone how many people's futures are ruined by women. It's up to you whether you still want this daughter-in-law or not. But there is one thing I want to tell you. This time, my little Aju didn't lose anything. If there's a next time, don't blame me for not remembering our old relationship. There won't be a next time. Lin Feng stood up straight. He finally understood what his father meant when he told him back then. To marry a wife, one had to be virtuous. This sentence was not without its original meaning. This wife of his really didn't know where she was wrong at all. After Helene Vivian got the answer she wanted, she turned to look at the little prince behind her. Qingchun has left. They are still waiting. I promised my brother that I would take a photo of little Aju for him to see. Hellion Qingshun just stood there. Her pretty little face was really very handsome, but the corners of her eyes were a little lonely. He had even prepared a big bag of cash for his sister. He was going to give it to her. Could it be that she was really going to leave without even seeing him? Faintly, a layer of spiritual energy lingered around Hellion Qingshun's body. Usually, at this time, little Baldy would sit on the big bed in by Zhuan's room and roll around, chanting Buddhist scriptures and meditating. But today, she seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly sat up straight and did not greet Bai Zhuan. She just ran out with her little turtle claws wrapped in a white cloth. Bai Zhuan was still washing the child's kasaya, so he did not react so quickly. Everyone knew that when little Baldy ran, she was no different from a flaming wheel. In the blink of an eye, she was gone. However, after running out, she did not know where to turn. The white cat on top of her head seemed to know what her little master was thinking and meowed towards the east. Chapter 1142. Hearing this, little Baldy paused and immediately turned around. Like a flaming wheel, he ran towards the direction of the gate at full speed. This time, little Baldy's running was different from usual. She was afraid that she would miss something. Her pink little face was covered in a thin layer of sweat, but she still did not give up. While panting, she saw the noble-looking young man under the tree from afar. The young man was wearing a decent suit with a white rose on the pocket of his suit. He seemed to be preparing to leave. Who else could it be but Hellion Qingshun? In the entire family, only Qingshun could get close to little Baldy. Baligaju and Bailey Shangxia had to stay 100 meters away from her. The demonic nature was too strong and would disturb little Aju. They knew this better than anyone else. Therefore, Bailey Shangxia was now sitting in the sports car outside the courtyard with a cold smile. He had thought of many ways to kill the Lin family. Little Baldy had seen her second brother before, but that was only a photo. Now, she saw Hellion Qingshun in person. Little Baldy immediately pounced on her second brother. To be honest, if it were anyone else, they would definitely be pounced on by little Baldy like this. After all, her strength was obvious. Only Hellion Qingshun curled his lips and hugged his younger sister in his arms. Second brother. Is it second brother? Is it a living second brother? It's not the second brother in the photo. When little Baldy was excited, she completely showed her true colors when she was a monk on the mountain. Second brother, why are you here? Didn't you say that you can't see me? Why is second brother so tall? Why am I so small? Hellion Qingshun listened to the little girl's words with a doting expression on his face. Aju, eat more. You will grow taller in the future. But I can already eat enough, and I'm still so small. When it came to height, little Baldy was distressed. Hellion Qingshun patted his little sister's head. His eyes fell on the little girl's hand, and his gaze turned cold. Does it still hurt? It doesn't hurt. Little Baldy raised her little hand. Second brother, don't worry. When I recover, I will go and catch that person and beat him up. Hellion Qingshun agreed with her sister on this point. If you want to beat him up, just do it. Don't hold it in. Yes. Second brother. A living second brother. Little Baldy was so happy that he kept repeating the same sentence. Hellion Qingshun also missed her little sister. She kissed her little forehead and said, "When you grow up, my brother and I will come and pick you up. Mom and Dad are waiting outside. I can only stay for a while. My brother asked me to take a picture of you and show it to him. I saw a big brother." Speaking of Bailey Shangxia, little Baldy was even more eager to express his feelings. His little paws hugged Hellion Qingshun's waist as he raised his little face and said seriously, "That day when I was shopping, I saw the commercial that big brother acted in. After that, I stood there and watched for a very long time." Hellion Qingshun was still smiling. Suddenly, he realized that someone was approaching. He let go of little Baldy in his arms and then put the package in his hand in his sister's hand. "You don't know how to use a bank card. These are all given to you by your brothers. If you don't have money, write letters to your brothers. I brought a lot of money down the mountain this time, but I can't spend it." Little Bald Head puffed up her cheeks and finished speaking. She still took the package. She and her brothers had never been courteous, but she was reluctant to let Qingchen go. Her little hand kept tugging on Hellion Qingchen's suit. Hellion Qingchen looked at his sister in front of him, then squatted down and kissed her face again. Like a little adult, he instructed little Baldy, "Adieu, we will come to pick you up soon. Second brother has to leave. Coming to see you this time is already a violation of the precepts. It is not good for your cultivation. Mom said that you are in the Bai family and have Bai Zhuan's protection. We can rest assured, even if Mom, Dad, and brothers are not by your side. As long as you have something, we will appear." Okay, little Baldy never cried, but when he heard that his second brother was leaving, the little guy's eyes were a little red. No matter how reluctant he was, his little hand also let go of the cloth he was holding. Hellion Qingchen glanced behind him. Then he walked out of the courtyard. Separated by the iron gate of the courtyard, little Baldy was lying there. His little hands were grabbing, and his big round eyes were unwilling to look away. He kept looking until Hellion Qingchen's figure disappeared. When Bai Zhuan arrived, he saw such a scene. He did not know who little Ju was looking at. He frowned and looked outside, but he did not see anything. Bai Zhuan had always been smart. His first reaction was to check the surveillance cameras in the courtyard. But the strange thing was that there were flowers everywhere in the video. However, according to the guard on duty, little Ju had indeed seen a person. That person was a boy about the same age as her. A boy. When Bai Zhuan heard this news, his brows furrowed even tighter. Just as he was still thinking about the relationship between that boy and little Ju, outside the military compound, a pure black extended Rolls-Royce with an aura that was difficult to ignore drove into the traffic. Bailey Shangxia sat in the car. His handsome face had already grown into a little Prince Charming that could make little girls blush. The corners of his mouth curled up, and cold white teeth popped out between his thin lips. He snorted coldly and said, "It seems that this Bai Zhuan treats his sister quite well. The Bai family is quite reliable." Hellion Qingchen pulled up the photo from her phone and showed it to Bailey Shangxia. Little Ju has grown a little taller now. Bailey Shangxia had always been a brother lover. First, he wiped the corner of his brother's mouth. Then, the two youths leaned their heads together and looked at their sister's photo. In front of them, a man as elegant as a demon reached out and pulled Hellion Wei Wei into his arms, whispering something into her ear. That perfect side profile was reflected on a glass window, making people unable to shift their gaze away from it. It was as if no matter how many years had passed, as long as Hellion Vivian was around, his eyes would always be filled with gentleness. Of course, after leaving Hellion Vivian, the aura on the man's body changed. It was completely cold, causing the clouds to change and the wind to surge. "Where is he?" "Your Highness, in the side hall. You can let it go back now. We have to let old Master Lin tell his daughter-in-law what kind of person she has provoked." "Yes, Your Highness." Old Master Lin had been in the military all his life. When he came out of the villa, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. However, compared to the lingering fear, he simply wished that he could immediately chase Mrs. Lin out of the Lin family. Mrs. Lin was still lying on the bed and making a fuss. When she saw that old Master Lin had returned, the fuss became even more intense. She shouted that she must find the person who fired the gun and let the other party be sued. Old Master Lin was so angry that he laughed. His face was gloomy. "Do you know who the other party is? You want the other party to be sued? That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.